Yeah, put me in, coach.
Ready to play day.
Okay, good.
So
Here we yeah.
we are here.
Yeah,
And
we were mid conversation. Hey Dodge, it's
yeah,
great to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
good, good to see you. I think we're both know the song that I was quoting. John Fogerty was the one I was thinking of.
Right, right, right,
Put
right. Put me in,
ready to
coach.
play today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to introduce the audience yet again to Mitch Brisker. Really fascinating figure. Was kind of the main behind the scenes media guy for, I would say, over a decade, maybe over two at this point. And we'll talk about the process of his
28 years.
yeah, 20, so almost 3. Wow. Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I also helped to set up Scientology Media Productions, the
Yes.
broadcast facility in LA. I did all their original messaging and mission statement and a whole
Right.
bunch of crap. And
Right.
I'm here to apologize. Okay, so
Forgive it.
anyway,
That's
yeah,
that's that's part of the process is expressing.
yeah, yeah, it is, it is.
And you're a great guest to have on because so many of these people who have left Scientology left after 2010 or maybe 2015
Right.
or maybe 16, but to have
No,
somebody who
2005 or like
right,
they
even
left a
way
while
early,
ago.
right? I could think of very few people who are even in there in the 2010s. I mean, maybe Chris Shelton, but no, I don't. I want to say he was
No,
even late 2000s.
right, right.
So there may be Aaron
No,
even 2010s.
yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
well, I don't know. I think Aaron actually left Scientology. I think it was around 2013. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak
Okay,
for
so
him.
there you go. So a few 2010s, but you're by far the most recent, so that's interesting.
Yeah, me and
But
Rachel Hastings, we left about the same
Rachel
time.
Hastings, well, I need to connect with Rachel too.
I
I
know
very much.
at some point, I hope you can get her
Yeah,
on,
no
or
pressure.
she and I will do something together because we worked together.
Awesome.
We
Oh,
since
fascinating. Okay.
2004, when she joined the Sea Org as a young woman, as a cinematographer, knew nothing much about Scientology. Uh, I met her. We worked together. We were dear friends. We're still dear friends. So it's just
Cool.
and coincidentally, we left about the same time. And after I left, Mike Rinder was one of the first people I spoke with. And Mike said, "Do you know Rachel?" And I was just like, "Well, yeah, of course." And he said, "You guys should hook up because she's
Of
out
course.
and she's
You didn't
married
even
and
know.
she's yeah." So he kind of got us together, which was great. So
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And she's been posting now and revving up herself, if I'm not mistaken.
she's too busy to come on YouTube. She's shooting
Oh, okay.
constantly.
She's not okay. Cool. Okay, so
She's a
that's
really successful cinematographer. She has a
cool.
wonderful
Good for
family.
her.
She's married to a naval veteran. Her wife is
Cool.
this wonderful woman. They have foster
Cool.
kids. They're like the
Cool.
picture of a anti-harm family, the exact
Yeah.
opposite of a Scientology family,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
That's a
really,
lot of
really,
trauma to have
yeah,
to
it's really cool.
family. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's well. I hope she does share her story at length at some point because
Oh,
it
she
sounds like
has. No, she
okay. Of
has
course,
because
okay,
yeah,
because I've
no,
heard
she
her
has.
name a bunch. Certainly,
Yeah, no, she's been on with Mike and Leah. She's been on a couple
right.
times with
Okay,
me.
yes. Okay,
Yeah.
doesn't have her own thing.
No, she
But
doesn't
yeah,
have
no,
time to do it.
right, right.
Plus, she's too technically skilled. I
That's
mean,
funny.
it would just frustrate her.
Yeah,
She
you don't
wouldn't know
like
which equipment. Yeah, I'm just joking, but
it.
she's
That's cool. So that's cool too that you had a friend that was out even though you got out somewhat recently. You were still able to
no,
find that.
because we finally. I mean, here was the deal. So Rachel, it's her story, but she joined in 2004 to be a
It's your story.
cinematographer. She became the single most important cinematographer in Scientology.
Okay.
She trained all of the camera people at Scientology Media Productions. She at one point was selected to be David Miscavige's personal photographer, which she couldn't
Wow.
figure it out because she's not a photographer. She's a great photographer, but she's a cinematographer. And we had always wanted to work together. She was cleared to come to
Cool.
Gold.
You both
She
had
wanted
that
to come
skill.
in. Yeah, she came up there a little bit, but we didn't work together up there. But we always had Rachel and I always had this plan to work together, and then finally we worked together at Scientology Media Productions for a while, and then I got Scientology trouble, which everybody does, and I got sent back up to Gold. Um,
Right.
and then I didn't see her again, and then until Mike told me Rachel's out, and literally we left like the same month. Like it was,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, her
That's
escape
funny.
story was more intense because it was more physically intense because she was a Sea Org member,
Well,
and
sure, sure. You're in that environment the whole time. That's what
yeah,
surrounds
and there's a lot of restrictions.
you. Right.
Uh,
Right. I mean, everybody's just a challenge in their own way. But yeah, if you're in that
Oh,
structure, in that base. It is essentially like prison. So that's a whole different
yeah,
world.
exactly. Oh, you know what? I forgot to stream this to my channel. I'm just going to
Oh,
do this
feel free.
now.
Go ahead.
Let's access you Google. Okay, I don't know why I didn't do that. I wasn't seeing the chat, and then I realized that I didn't do it.
Oh, that's funny.
We should be good now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. No rush.
Anyway,
yeah.
so that's kind of the most recent story.
Cool. Yeah. And so you're out recently, but wanted to talk, or as you did sort of in the last podcast, if you don't mind rehashing.
Oh, not at all, not at all. I'm just gonna get myself in here.
Take your time
while you talk to me, please.
Sure. Yeah. So, you have an interesting way that you came into Scientology. If I'm not mistaken, was it the mid 80s, late 80s, or even earlier?
Oh, no. Yeah, it was. I'm
70s?
so old. I'm so old. Thank God this isn't a date. Thank God this isn't a dating site. 1973. I just turned 23.
Way back, 73.
Yeah, way back. Yeah. So
the height of Scientology in a lot of ways.
Yeah, in one way, but not it. Scientology's had a couple of highs, but I was kind of
seemed to me like the 70s and the 80s as well, high 80s, but maybe I'm wrong. And then late 60s.
Well, I think the big influx of membership, probably the biggest, not proportionally, but in numbers, was in the early 90s as a result of the Dianetics book being made into a bestseller in the 80s.
I didn't even know that. Huh.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that. I was intimately involved with all that. And again, I'm here to apologize. So
that's all right. Wow. So it resurfaced and became a bestseller in the 80s yet again.
Yeah, it did. As a matter of fact, it was a bestseller twice. It was a bestseller when it first came out in 1950, and it was a bestseller in 1985. Yeah, and it's been a bestseller since then, but all of that, it was rigged. Like David Miscavige figured out like ways that you could game the system. You could buy books.
Well, I always wondered this. I should know this, but since you're an author, what constitutes a bestseller? How many books is it?
Well, I don't. I don't have the exact numbers, but I can tell you that there's it has nothing to do with Amazon. It has nothing to do with the amount of books you sell.
Really?
Yeah, there's a group. There's a number of sample bookstores. I don't know what they are. It's like what do you call that? The homes that they check out for TV. Whatever it is. So there's these bookstores. There's there's these the homes where they do the ratings. I can't remember.
I wouldn't even tell you that. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, ratings are kind of obsolete because of streaming services, but they still.
Oh, like a Nielsen thing, you're saying?
Yeah, Nielsen. It's like Nielsen. Right. Nielsen's 10,000 households.
Right.
It's not the whole country. It's not everybody. Right. So basically, a New York Times bestseller. And if anybody in the chat can help me with this, please do. But as I understand it, there's a selection of bookstores, and these bookstores report. And whatever books are selling the most at those bookstores, those are the New York Times bestsellers list.
That's interesting. So then I guess Scientology could have made an effort to get their books into specific high volume bookstores.
Well, they did. Right. They absolutely did.
Right.
And then they had Scientologists go in and buy them. And then they had them sold back. And then they did all kinds of crazy stuff. It's actually in Jeff Hawkins, Jefferson Hawkins, who was a guy I worked with in the 80s. Because I worked for the church before I went to Gold. I was hired to direct TV commercials for Dianetics in the 80s. And Jefferson was the one who designed the whole campaign, which put the book back on the bestsellers list. And he's detailed in his book. Oh, here's somebody said, OBG Foster said, yes, New York Times gets data from bookstores and probably also Amazon now. Right. Independent bookstores probably didn't report to them. Yeah, I don't think they do Amazon, but there are, maybe they do now. I don't know, but it's a sample of bookstores and how whatever's selling there. Yeah, that's what it is.
So you just need to know how to market effectively. It's not like
like if I had the resources, if I had the resources, I could probably get my book on it best.
Right.
You know.
Right. That's I didn't. So what?
Yeah.
So well, I guess we're all talking about what was that approach? What was that campaign? Was it simply a bunch of buybacks? Was it, you know? Oh, did he work on advertisements for it?
Oh, you mean the legitimate one or the illegitimate one that came later?
Both. I mean, I'm talking about the 80s when it was a bestseller. Like, how do you guys put it back on the bestseller chart? You know, was it simply buying back books, or was there a concerted? Was that the moment when you saw everybody on the subway asking about the personality test? Is that when that movement began, or is it?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, kind of. Here's what happened was, I don't know about the illegitimate one. I don't know. It's in Jeff's book. I didn't memorize it. The way they gamed the system to get it back on the New York Times, like they would literally buy this shit. But the original one, basically, so this was at the birth of cable TV. This is in the mid '80s.
Right.
Cable TV was the wild, wild west. I mean, people were going to jail, like for real. People went to prison who were doing like infomercials. And
public access. Yeah, a lot of famous stars got their start in raunchy public access programs. So
yeah. It was crazy. Like remember, but that's not all, Bob. Remember Bob? But that's not all, Bob. One of those guys went to prison. And then there was like the Sham Wow guy who apparently had something to do with
Vince Offer. Yeah.
Was
Vince Offer a Scientologist, dude?
Yeah, he'd done Scientology. Yeah. That was later. We're talking about the 80s. That was the 90s. Yes. Yeah, the Sham Wow guy was a Scientologist.
I had no idea. I did know that he had a bunch of drug arrests and had quite
so we're way down a rabbit hole, Dodge.
Yeah,
do you remember Kevin Trudeau, the vitamin guy, the diet guy?
Yes, he was a scammer who also went to jail. That was a big fraud.
They kicked him out of Scientology. He was
a Scientologist?
Yeah, he was.
He was the biggest TV fraud guy for 6 years. Hundreds of millions of dollars.
But you know, Scientology has to have a cable or internet fraud. I mean, now they got like
it makes sense. You go from him to Grant Cardone, and they're both Scientologists. Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, so I have a friend. I'm not going to mention him. He's still in Scientology, so we're not friends anymore.
Okay.
But he was an infomercial producer, marketer, very bright guy, and Kevin Trudeau found out about Dianetics and Scientology. So Kevin Trudeau used to sell all this different stuff. So he decided to include Dianetics in all of his amongst his offerings, right? So they couldn't, and then he got in some kind of legal trouble, and he was doing Scientology services at Flag, and they kicked him off the base.
Really? And they didn't like that.
They banned him. He was too big a scammer. Well, if he had been, but I tell you,
a lot for Scientology to say that.
Yeah, but he wasn't. If he had been making a ton of money and was donating the way Grant Cardone does,
right?
They wouldn't have kicked him out because they need the cash.
Right. There's funny. Jen sells this. Kris Jenner had this Dare Stepper infomercial. That was before my time, but I heard about that. And Ron Pipe.
Yeah. But Ron Popeil. If you ever read what's his name, Gladwell, Malcolm Gladwell's, his stories about Ron. I mean, Ron Popeil was the real deal. He was third generation.
Write about that person. I had to look it up.
Absolutely. I think he wrote about it not in Outliers. Oh, where did he write about it? I mean, Ron Popeil was a third generation, setting stuff up at the Jersey Shore and selling kitchen stuff, and they knew how to do it. And I never had one, but apparently that kitchen rotisserie was just like really a good product.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, no, people that had it swore by it. Like they were eating roast chicken twice a week.
Wow. Anyway, who travels is probably a good thing to get, honestly.
Yeah. But anyway, to get this whole thing on track, if that's actually possible. So what happened? Right. It was the early days of cable TV, and nobody knew how to buy media on cable TV. Nobody knew how to buy ads. You could buy ads. And the amazing thing about it is you could target those ads. You could
anybody could buy ads at that time.
Anybody could buy ads. Well, anybody with money can buy ads now. I mean, you do need a broker, Scientology uses an outside broker.
And I guess there's no FCC, I guess, in cable. Obviously.
No, they hadn't showed up yet. It's the Wild West. Okay,
it
so
really was fascinating.
No. But here's how it works. A bunch of people conquer a new land seeking religious freedom. It gets crowded. They start to move west. It's lawless territory.
Yeah.
They hang some bad guys. The sheriff shows up. They move west, and then eventually they hit the Pacific Ocean. There's no more territory, and so they invent cable, and that becomes the new Wild West. Because we all, humans, especially Americans, we always have to have a lawless land. We just have to. We have to have some aspect of our culture that's lawless. That was cable TV. So what happened was Jeff had this amazingly brilliant, stupid idea to buy ads on cable TV because he knew people were watching it at midnight. They had their credit cards on their nightstands. They were anxious. Their marriages were falling apart. They were drinking. Right. They were perfect suckers for Dianetics.
Like DeVry University now, or, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So he figured out how to get a hold of these mailing lists and then demographically sort through the mailing list and figure out where to buy ads. And then he found a media buyer who was very savvy and was willing to parse her way through, you know, puzzle her way through this brand new world of buying ads on cable. And then we made these ads, you know, like the famous questions ads with the music.
Sure.
We made these ads, and they were cheap. They put them on everywhere. They sold so here's the deal. The book was published in 1950. By 1984, it had sold 3 million copies, which is abysmal. And then
I was going to say that long. Yeah.
No, that's abysmal for a book like that. I mean, if you look at the world of self-help books, that was abysmal. I mean, I think, well, this is much later, but I think the note, what is that one? The message, the note, the whatever.
Oh, The Secret?
The Secret. Yeah, that thing sold over 50 million bucks.
Yeah, right. Just getting my soda real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
I got it.
Are you in an airplane? You look like you're in a private airplane.
I know, it looks like one, doesn't it?
You look like you're in a rich dude's jet.
I wish. I wish. I'm in an RV. It's a lot less glamorous.
Oh, nice.
It's kind of cool. Yeah, I'm in Monroe, Louisiana, so I'm traveling the whole continent.
Nice.
A little RV that's right on the river, which is kind of nice.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it's like it's kind of like a B&B kind of thing. It's like an RV.
Yeah, it's an Airbnb. Yeah, so it's $60 a night, which is not awful.
No, that's great.
Yeah. So it's kind of a fun way to do it. And Airbnb is the most fun because you're saying all these different types of places.
Okay. So essentially what happened was, so they sold 3 million copies by the time we started to do these ads. And Jeff Hawkins really, I can't ever speak about this without mentioning that he is the guy that designed this whole thing. Okay. And 3 years later, we sold another 10 million bucks.
Wow.
So this was a really effective ad campaign. I mean, I've referred to it as the most successful advertising campaign in the history of publishing, which is not really saying that much because publishing doesn't really take advantage.
Right. I lost you for a second. You still hear me?
Yeah. You ducked out and you came back. But so, that was that. And that was my initial foray into working for the church.
Okay. So you got involved early 70s. You were addicted to heroin.
I managed to get myself into, I grew up in Laurel Canyon, which I've spoke about a lot, about growing up in West Hollywood, growing up in Laurel Canyon during the whole explosive music scene.
Right.
And I was kind of a teenager, you know, I was just sort of behind a lot of those bands in age. So, you know, I had a really interesting youth in that respect. I left Hollywood. I left Laurel Canyon when I graduated from high school. I went up to the Bay Area seeking a more peaceful existence. I landed there in what is now called the Summer of Love.
Oh, sure. 69, of course.
No, it was not 69. No, it wasn't 69. Oh. It was, I think it was 67 or 68.
67, right. Maybe I think you're right. 67, yeah.
69 was the Manson murders.
That was, right. And
August.
Right.
That was the end of the... Yeah, that was the end of the hippie era. So I arrived in San Francisco, I think in 1967, early in the summer, and
saw Haight-Ashbury, I assume, and all that. And
but the thing I didn't realize is there was 100,000 other kids showing up at the same time, not to go to art school, but to just have sex and smoke weed and drop acid. And,
Tune
and
in and
it was
drop out. Tune in, turn on, drop out. All that
yeah,
jazz.
yeah. It was
Yeah.
pretty crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah, I got a sense of that. I was up there for a semester, and I came back to
Okay.
LA, and I got into film.
And what was, I don't, what were your parents' gigs or
What did
deal?
they
Were
do?
they, or
Oh,
what did they? Yeah. Were they relatively forward thinking? Were they traditional?
my
Uh,
parents were communists. Are you freaking kidding?
Hardcore. Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
So
my parents
they
were
were
hardcore.
classic
My
leftists.
parents had friends who
Cool.
were like, members of the Hollywood blacklist. My father was brought
Right.
up before the FBI. My father was an architect. My mother was an art
Cool.
professor.
So he's like dealt
Um,
with HUAC and stuff like that and all
well,
that other
actually, it was
stuff.
a local FBI flap. It wasn't
Oh,
HUAC.
cool.
So he
Okay.
didn't get full HUAC cred. But my
Cool.
parents
He's like
were,
mixed.
yeah, I mean, they were friends with Michael Wilson, who
Cool.
wrote Lawrence of Arabia, who was
Sure.
blacklisted, and they were friends not because my parents had any Hollywood connection, because Michael Wilson's his wife was an architect, and she and my father were kind of cohorts.
Cool. Oh, fascinating. Okay, so they were really kind of cutting edge forward
Oh
thinking.
yeah. Going all the way back to the Spanish Civil War. I kid you
Wow.
not.
Cool. Okay.
My mother, this is crazy. My mother went to Hunter College. She grew up in Brooklyn. She went to Hunter College with Bella Abzug and that whole
Wow.
proto-feminist
Of
school.
course, ran for
Yeah,
mayor,
like
congresswoman.
yeah, they were friends. Okay. And
Wow, that's what you see Bella was like back then. Was she just
I don't know. My
see
mother's not around. I can't answer.
well, sure.
I can't ask her.
Right.
I could just tell you they were the opposite looking of one another because my mother was an absolute. My mother looked like a supermodel. But anyway,
a little less somewhat, right.
Yeah, she a little less than a supermodel. Right. But I know my mother, when she was in college, she helped to organize the Lincoln Brigade that went over to Spain. So my parents were always very politically organized.
Right.
Yeah,
So
they were very political. They were,
thinkers, left. It reminds
very,
me of
very much so.
Right. It reminds me of my.
Okay, so I just have to answer this question. OBG Foster said,
I saw that too.
Yeah, Mitch wants to know if I went. He wants to know if I went to the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival. I did not.
Cool.
I did not. Yeah, I mean that was the first rock festival.
Original, sure.
Yeah, and a lot of people say it was the last because Woodstock was such a disaster. I will tell you though, OBG Foster,
Altamont later on. He would say Altamont might have been the very last, but
yeah, maybe, but I don't think. Altamont was almost its own thing. It was so weird. I almost went. Two things I almost went to was Elvis's last concert in Vegas and Altamont. I mean, I was literally almost in a car going to Altamont, and I was so glad I didn't go.
I mean, you might have gotten the shit you in Altamont.
You never know. I might have been the guy that was stabbed. Who knows?
Yeah, right. Right. Better safe than sorry.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. And another, how are they getting away with the teens in the organization being there? Is there any investigating?
What are you talking about?
Reading a comment. I'm sure it still happens, but so how are they getting away with the teens in the organization being there? So we'll segue a little bit because this is an interesting question.
Okay, well, here's the deal.
The teens who were in. I'm not sure it still happens, but the kids as messengers and such. Well, right. It's like I saw kids working on the dais and the stage, and they were like probably 15 in Chicago.
When did you see that? Oh, really?
Is alive and well.
But were they in Sea Org? Were they in Sea Org uniforms?
No, they see as more casual, so maybe they,
Yeah, they might have picked them up as local volunteers. I mean, here's the deal. Let me just say this. I'm going to go on record as saying this. Everybody can attack me all you want. You all know my contact information.
You're used to it.
Yeah, there haven't been children in the Sea Org in 20 years. Okay. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but there's no children in hotels. There's no children being abused. It's that whole thing is a big it's just a misdirection to here's the problem, because here's the deal. And I saw this happen. The whole thing with, first Miscavige banned families from having babies, right? And they heavily promoted abortions. And I saw all that. When I got into Scientology, when I first got in, there was a Celebrity Center and I was trying to get off drugs. I worked in the nursery. I mean, I was like, what's his name? Vonnie Ribisi, the actor. His parents were in the Sea Org at that time. I mean, I used to babysit him.
What's he like as a baby?
Yeah, cool. No, he and his twin sister. He's a great guy, and so's his sister.
Is he actually a decent dude? That's nice to hear. I bet some of them are actually probably.
No, he's Vonnie is. I mean, I haven't seen him in years, but I have tremendous respect for him as an actor, and I knew him as a kid.
Sure, me
I
too.
knew him when his career started to take off,
Cool.
and I thought he was a great guy. So anyway, Miscavige banned babies, banned families,
Right.
and then they, as the kids grew up, there's no more kids. I mean, if you do the math on when the last babies were born in the Sea Org, if you do the math on when Miscavige said no more babies, there's no more kids in the Sea Org.
That's funny.
There can't be, and they won't take anybody in the Sea Org unless you are 18 and you have a GED, because it's too much trouble
now.
Yeah, it's too much trouble for them, because if you don't have a GED, they kind of got to get you one, or it's just bad public relations. So I
was surprised nobody's done a Trump University style suit on Scientology with, I mean, I was talking to Vanessa, she had gone to, school before. I was talking to some other people, and, they would go to Scientology schools and find out that oftentimes they weren't accredited and stuff, or you couldn't.
Yeah. I mean, you mean like the place where my kids went for a while.
Right. Well, that's a weird, right. There's never Sea Orgs, but there still are there are schools that.
Yes, but the point is, I'm not saying, Dodge, I'm not saying there's not kids in Scientology.
No, I know.
I'm saying there's no kids in the Sea Org.
No, right. Yeah.
They don't want them. It's just a problem. It's just.
Is there a cadet org? Somebody, Michael says.
No, because there's no cadets. I mean, what would the cadets be? There's no children. Okay, so look, I didn't do the math. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but if you look at the day, by the time I got to gold in 1990, there was no babies up there. There were little kids, because I knew a lot of them, like Laura FM, and like cool. I knew her, and I knew a bunch of these kids. But there were no babies. And so even if, let's say, he banned it in 1990, all those kids would be grown up. I mean, Laura's like 40.
Right.
There's like no kids in the Sea Org. Like this thing about the children. The point is that they are human trafficking people from different points of the world.
Right.
That's the problem. The problem is, what about the children of public Scientologists who are they are being emotionally abused, because raising a child in Scientology is minimally a very severe form of emotional abuse.
Sure.
But nobody's talking about this. They're talking about, I keep hearing this stuff about kids being abused in the hotels. There's no children in any hotels anywhere.
Well, but I think some people do have the viewpoint. I don't know what the statute of limitations are, but that if it was 25 years ago or 35 years ago, it'd still be valid enough to personally charge Miscavige.
Absolutely, but it needs to be framed that way, and it can't suck the oxygen out of. It has to be framed like, you people, maybe there's no more kids in the Sea Org, but what did you do when there were? You get what I'm saying? I mean, it needs to be framed, because what do you want the FBI to go in and raid the Fort Harrison Hotel? They're not going to find anything, and then everybody looks stupid. Like you have to frame the thing properly, and then you have to say, well, what about the children that are being raised by Scientologists? I mean, there's some horrible outcomes. Like Liz Gale lost her dear brother. They were never in the Sea Org. There's these horrible stories, these horrible outcomes, and these are minimally emotional abuse. And the only reason I'm saying this so vehemently is I'd like to see the narrative
really
parallel what's actually happening, so that it can be ended. Is it okay? So Bridge said, is it a problem that children are auditors? Yes, it is absolutely a problem. We're talking about the children of public Scientologists. That's what we're talking about. Like when I was at Gold, there was a 14-year-old auditor who audited me under Marty Rathbun, and she audited me in such a way. Oh yeah, and she audited me in such a way, like she had an earpiece in her ear, right? And Marty was in the next room listening to our session, and he was screaming in her ear. When somebody's like earpiece is bleeding, like they're listening to their iPod so freaking loud, you can hear it kind of buzzing. I could make out his voice. He was asking her the most disgusting things. Ask him if he to a dog or so there's the most things that were so obscene, so obscene that, like, I'm sure pornographers would be saying, "Whoa, Marty, hold
So
on.
here's something curious because you've witnessed that, which is fascinating. You've actually witnessed a child
It
auditor.
happened to me. No, it actually literally happened to me. I wrote about it. I talked to the FBI
Been
about it.
audited. So what? So when you ever see, because the kid's 14, would you ever see the kid either recoil in disgust or laugh uproariously?
No, they just kept no. They
God, they were
just
that
kept.
brainwashed. He was
Yeah, no, because they had their TRs in. They're trained to sit there and not react. They're being judged on how well they can not react. And
right.
this
Taking
particular,
going
yeah,
to protests, right?
yeah, this particular person, um,
It's so weird. It's just you almost lose your weird humanity ticks, even.
I tried to
No,
break her down because
funny.
I
Because if
felt
I
so.
were asked that question, if you banged a dog and I was 14 years old,
It was
I
worse than
couldn't
that. I
stop
can't tell you
laughing.
what it was.
Right.
No. But you have Marty Rathbun, the top cop
Right.
of
So
Scientology. He's
hearing
screaming
everything.
in your ear.
Right.
No, this is and I'm sitting there like saying things to her, trying to get her to like snap out of it, right? And it doesn't work.
A for effort.
It doesn't
Right.
work. So this person, I don't know if she's in Scientology anymore. I know she's not in the Sea Org. She came to me years later, like maybe she must have been in her 20s. She came into my office. I was still working at Gold. She sat down and she looked at me, and the look in her face was, "I'm sorry." Marty was gone. All that phase was ended, and she was kind of like felt really bad about it. She
And this
felt
is when you were
really.
still in Scientology, you're saying, or this is after?
Yeah, I was at Gold. I was like the
Right.
senior director. I was in charge
Even
of all.
that's it. Even when she was in Scientology, she's just like, this is kind of stupid.
What's that? Say that again.
See, even when she was still in Scientology, she still even gave you that look of being like,
She gave me a look like I'm sorry, like I'm
interesting.
sorry. And at that point, she worked in it's called AVC, authorization verification and something, and it was part of like RTC. And so let's say I needed some cramming, what they call cramming. Like I say, I screwed something
Right.
up and I needed to go. She's like, look, if you ever need any cramming, like come to me, I'll help you. So we actually became friends
Cool.
over
Good for
that
you
whole
to help
thing.
her.
And well, yeah, because we sort of had this agreement, this patent agreement. Well, it was really Marty's doing. Marty was the bad guy, which is to some degree that was very true because he was a bad guy.
Yes.
Yeah. But he was, for many years, he was David Miscavige's closest friend. So.
Yeah. Well, that's a fascinating conversation about that whole situation too, which you have a lot of insight with. First, Jensel makes a good point. You mentioned trafficking. They could potentially traffic in underage Sea Org members and hold their papers. They aren't on any books. Being born in.
Yeah, they could, but I mean, my own personal. Yeah, that's very
they
true.
do that though with like immigrants, though. Is that actually a thing?
Yeah, but I think
take your passport. They're not kids, but I've heard that's still a thing.
Yeah, I know. I know that at Gold they stopped keeping people's passports as soon as the Scientology learned that one of the things that the FBI looks for human trafficking is people have their documents taken away.
Right.
What I saw at Gold was they stopped doing that. They're like, oh, that's illegal. Oh shit, give everybody back your documents. But I guarantee you, they kept track of their documents. Like they probably told them, your documents need to be put in the nightstand next to your bed because we're going to go in there every day and we're going to inspect your room and we're going to make sure they're in there. So I'm sure they found a workaround. You get what I'm saying? Like they still didn't let them have control of their documents, but they weren't holding them because they knew that was illegal. It's the same thing with them getting rid. Yeah, it's the same thing with them getting rid of the RPF. Yeah, they got rid of the RPF because it was such bad PR, but they found other ways to punish people severely, and re-indoctrinate them and so forth. So,
and a lot of this is changing the semantics on their part, I'm sure, and looking at the legal.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just change the word.
Does the room qualify to hold people? What, if you take a document, what qualifies as keeping the document from them? If you mention one sentence and say you could have your document at the very beginning and then pretend it never exists, whatever it might be.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're very clever because I'm sure, like, I don't know what they did with the documents. I do know that they stopped holding them because it's just too much. I mean, Miscavige, he blew out of the international base in 2013 because, well, two reasons. One, he was worried about an FBI raid. And number two, he was worried that I mean, the way he voiced it to me personally was, I'm never coming back here because there's too many people here that fucked me over. But I mean, come on. I think he was worried that one of those people was just going to kill him, was going to find him without his entourage and just take revenge. So, I mean, you can only brutalize so many people before you can't stay there anymore. So, but I'm sure the way, I'm sure the way they did it was like, they instructed the staff where to keep their documents. And they instructed the staff that if you're ever interviewed by the FBI, you must tell them you have your documents and you know where they are. So I'm sure that they just did it that way. And then because they used to search everybody's room every day. So security would go in there. You weren't allowed to lock the door. There's all kinds of restrictions.
Right.
I mean, you don't have a room when you're in the Sea Org. You have a place that you can go sleep when people give you permission to sleep. I mean, it's horrible, man. It's like,
I was wondering about that, right? With the Sea Org or Kids in the Base or anything. Can you even bring in like a book or any outside media?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you could have no food in your room. And Gold was more permissive than other places. Gold was much more permissive.
And you were at Gold's a lot, I assume.
Most of the time I was at Gold. Yeah, from 1990 until about 2014. Then I went to S&P for a few years. Then I went back to Gold. Then I got the fuck out.
Right, that makes sense. So all right, so getting back, so you got into Scientology, early 70s, heroin addiction. What was the first moment when you got interested in did somebody literally hand you a leaflet? Did you see some?
No, what had happened was my girlfriend at the time, we had both gotten involved. We were both addicted to heroin, right?
Right.
And real quick, I had gone off to rehab. She got herself cleaned up. We got ourselves kind of cleaned up. And somehow when I was in rehab, I got cast in a movie called Dusty and Sweets McGee playing. They were looking
how do you get cast in a movie in rehab? How does it even work? Did somebody just walk into rehab and say, you?
No. There was a guy named Floyd Mutrux who was a kind of an interesting filmmaker. You can look him up. And no, this film it's still streaming on Amazon. I mean, it's in the museum.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, you should watch it. My girlfriend and I played the title characters. I didn't talk about this much for the film was made in, I think we shot it in 71. It was released in July 72. It was a top grossing film in LA for 2 weeks.
Yeah, no shit. Wow.
Yeah, so it was kind of supposed to be this kind of drug fueled.
Oh, Jefferson Hawkins is in here, by the way.
Oh, yeah. So, Jeff,
it's an honor to have you.
Jeff, your ears were buzzing, right? Because I was saying really nice things about
what
a genius you were for selling all those books. I just want you to know, Jeff, I've apologized for both of us for selling all those Dianetics books. So.
Hey, it takes talent.
Yeah.
So nice of him to be in there. But sorry, what were you saying? Is
yeah. So anyway, so this director who'd made a few films, and he wanted to make I would describe it as a drug-fueled cinema verite version of American Graffiti. No, I'm serious.
How fun.
With all of the music, except the music would be like very moody, as opposed to.
So it wouldn't be 50s, I assume, anymore.
No. It would be in the time that it was.
Are they going to make like Dion drop acid or something, or is it like doo-wop with like acid in it, or is it?
No. It was like I can't think. No. It was really cool. Like Into the Mystic. What was his name? Who did Into the Mystic? My Little Runaway.
Sure. Del Shannon.
Really cool. Yeah, Del Shannon, My Little Runaway, and then what's
cool.
his name? Yeah, it was really the soundtrack was fantastic. This guy was very much. He did another film called American Hot Wax, which was the guy was
famous. Isn't Richard Dreyfuss is in that? If I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know who's in American Hot Wax.
Yeah, American Hot Wax is.
He did.
That's a famous movie. Sure, of course.
Yeah. So this director, he wanted to do this kind of cinema verite thing. So like, he started talking to heroin addicts in LA. Like he found this one girl named Nancy who lived in Venice, and she was a dope fiend. Like a person, like I was never a dope fiend. There's a certain kind of heroin addict was a dope fiend. I was never a dope fiend. I was always struggling to get off of junk. I had whatever, for me.
You had some sort of.
Yeah, I was trying to get to college. I mean, for me, it was like some weird trauma response, getting involved with heroin. But anyway, so he was, okay. So anyway, so he wanted to make this film called Dusty and Sweets McGee, and so he was looking, he needed like a Romeo, not a Romeo and Juliet. He needed a really good looking, like screen ready couple, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, and I've showed people pictures of me on the movie, and they're like, "You got to be
Quite
fucking
striking.
kidding! That's
Cool.
you." So, so he was. They were they were producing this thing out of CBS Studio Center, right? Not far from where I currently live, and so somebody from that lot, from the production company, was calling rehabs, and they called the sketchy rehab that I was in. I was clean
Wow.
at that point,
So
and
they knew you looked, they were aware of you for some reason, and
no, they were just calling around saying, "You got any good-looking people there?" I'm
funny,
not bragging, but
funny.
I had
Wow,
modeled and I'd done some
it's a good way
acting,
to,
and
yeah.
I mean,
It's a good
if you
way to
Google it,
get
you'll.
affordable rates.
What's that?
It's a good way to get an affordable rate for an actor. Just call
Yeah,
it rehab.
yeah. No shit. Yeah, because
Yeah,
we
I
certainly
see
didn't
ads
get
left
paid
and
very
right.
much.
Yeah.
So anyway, the rehab guy said, "Yeah, I got a guy here, and his girlfriend is beautiful." And she was literally one of the most beautiful women who ever lived. I'm not even
Interesting.
joking. And
Okay.
you could Google it and look. You can
Yeah,
see
I would.
pictures of her. So anyway, so he loaded us in the car. So I called her up and I said, "Hey, come on out here. We're going to go audition for a film." I was a film student. I'm like, "This is cool." Right? Like I could
Right.
relate. I mean, as a kid who was trying to get off of junk, it was a horrible experience. But
Right.
as a film student, it was great, right? I mean, I got to work with, William Fraker shot the thing. I mean, he's probably the greatest cinematographer that never won an Oscar.
Cool.
Like
Okay.
William Randall did the sound. He won an Oscar for In Cold Blood. This was a
Cool.
legitimate
Sure.
independent film.
Sure.
So anyway, we
Well,
ended up doing this film, and by the time
that's a happy break. You go to rehab and then automatically get a film.
yeah. So I
Kind
get
of
cast in a
badass.
film.
Yeah.
No, so then let me see what happened was a long time ago. Okay, so by the time the film came out, she and I were back together, living in an apartment in West Hollywood, and we had become like the characters in the film. It was really tragic. And
That's fun.
I woke up a week before Christmas, and she was dead of an overdose on the kitchen
Sorry to
floor.
hear that.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And I've done a number of things that really honor her life because she was
Good.
an amazing person. Anyway, so the director, Floyd Mitrix, had started dating some girl who was doing Scientology, Celebrity Center. She brought him in, and he was doing Scientology, and he was kind of like one of the first celebrities at Celebrity Center, right? So then he brought me in, and
Right. Really noted. Oh, so he was already connected. Interesting.
yeah, he had just started doing Scientology.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I don't remember his girlfriend, whatever, but they weren't together very long. And so when I went there, I got a little rough start. If you want to read all about it, I'm not going to go into detail. It's all in my book. I've detailed the whole bloody journey into Scientology. It's a fascinating story. But when I got in there, it is when a woman by the name of Yvonne Jench, who founded Celebrity Center, she was married to Heber Jench, and there was a bunch of very notable people. It was if you know anything about Synanon, the drug rehab place.
Sure, of course.
The early days of Synanon, it's funny because I almost went to, I think I told you this, I almost went to Synanon, but it was too much of a cult, so I didn't go. So
yes, they're all the same era, all that stuff,
Yeah, so, but it's kind of like, there's no going back to what Synanon was when it started. I mean, you had people like Leonard Nimoy going down there and giving acting lessons. It was very much an accepted thing. People loved it. And then it became a dangerous armed cult because that's just the trajectory of these organizations. They all do it, right? So I got into Scientology.
70s
when I got, when I got into it, it was counterculture. It wasn't.
Oh, that's how they all started out. Right.
Yeah. It was very much a counterculture movement. It was an alternative movement. Like drugs didn't work and free love didn't work and nothing worked.
Right.
So maybe we need to take a more spiritual view.
Well, a lot of these things were always like, it's the ideas of the free love without the fun of the free love. It was kind of seems like.
Well, no, it's kind of weird because I think when I got into Scientology, I think everybody was, having sex with everybody else. And then, Scientology is one of the most sex negative organizations in the world. I mean,
That's why it's strange to hear that.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre. I mean, it's run by a guy who might potentially actually be asexual. We're not sure.
I always thought he might be.
Yeah, he very well may be very sexually deficient. I'm not sure, but I'm whatever. I'm not gonna.
Well, no, it's interesting to just for a second. That is interesting. Besides for Shelley and the rumor of Lou, has he ever?
Oh no, not a rumor, not a rumor.
Completely true.
You just say Shelley
some sexuality if he's
not necessarily. He has very close female. I mean, somebody did. I think it was Mark Fisher that told me he walked in on him and Shelley. He was banging Shelley in the whatever. Like he walked in and it was.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't know the thing with Lou. I mean, I flew on a jet. Everybody knows the story. I flew on Tom Cruise's jet, I think in 2016, 2017.
Right.
I flew to the IS event in England. Tom wasn't on the plane. But Tom tosses the keys to his jet to his bro. And then Dave probably, dips into the IES funds and pays for the gas because that's expensive, the gas from LAX to London. I mean, I think that's a lot of gas, and then he'll bring his best friends along. And I happen to be one of those people at that time for a brief period of time. I was working with him a lot. But, there's I think it was a G5. I'm not sure, but I Googled the bedroom. And two people are not going to spend the night in that bedroom without being intimate. I mean, at least they're like, Michael Jackson and his friends, and they're sleeping in the same bed. I mean, at least it's like that kind of thing.
Sure. You'll have issue with that, so.
Yeah, but it's like, we all like got on the jet and we had 5-star tacos and then we took off, and then an hour after takeoff, Dave and Lou disappeared, and I didn't see him until the next morning. So, and they were both freshly showered. And so it was just like, they look like they showered together, when people are kind of flush because they just shower. So I never thought it was a rumor. I mean, it's just like, that's why I've always made it. I've been shouting from the rooftops, this thing of like, where's Shelley? What about who's Lou? Because she is the woman behind Shelley's disappearance.
Right.
So if you really give a crap about Shelley, you're going to be talking about Lou.
What's she up to?
Yeah, she was jockeying to get rid of Shelley since the early 90s.
Right. I want to go to a few other comments because you think about my chat is not moderated, so you have the good, the bad, and the ugly. One person in this chat is anybody in this chat in support of these grease balls? So Lori doesn't appear to like any of us, but hey, thank you for watching nonetheless.
Does any know why narcissistic men are so drawn to cults? Lori B.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's actually not true, Lori. You have a very flawed understanding. Who's drawn to cults are people that are vulnerable and empathetic, and idealistic, and through a very devious series of events, they will often gain narcissistic traits. But very few narcissists are drawn to cults. I do know some. Right. Most people are drawn because of, I'll say it again, because of vulnerability and idealism, and they're very empathic. So I'm not quite sure.
If you're narcissistic, you like the economic pleasures, the luxuries, and it kind of keeps you happy in some ways.
Oh, is she like saying that I'm narcissistic because I was on Tom Cruise's jet? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you could help us qualify that.
Right. So Lori is another thing to know, which is interesting. I want to go back and help this creep understand that he was a perpetrator of child SA, which I don't think that was the case, but it's interesting.
Who, me?
Yes, I guess by being audited by a 14-year-old child. I don't know how that would be sexual assault. You can say that Marty Rapp committed sexual by saying these things.
I was actually I was actually a traumatized victim. What this person is doing.
Well, both of you were, right? Both you and the kid were.
They're trauma shaming because I was trauma bonded to the organization, and I was put in that position with her, and I spoke to the FBI about it. I mean, they weren't saying, you're a perpetrator. So this person, there's a lot of this stuff that goes on. It's kind of the normalization. I know,
it's why it's interesting just to.
Yeah,
She keeps saying, and we'll move on. But
yeah, please. No, but I really want people to understand that I was not the perpetrator of that
No,
situation.
no.
And
I
and just
assume,
for, yeah.
I assume if you saw her, you probably would apologize because you wouldn't want her, you wouldn't want her to audit you. But yeah, I mean, both of
Well,
you guys
no,
are,
I took myself out of that situation. Like, look,
you did right. That's a good point.
yeah, I took myself out of that situation and I went to the authorities. I told them about
Right.
it. I wrote a book about it. I went on
Well,
YouTube
that's
about
true,
it.
right? She's mad at you, but you're the one that's exposing this. So,
Yeah, but here's what's so funny. The only reason he
it's all
knows
good,
to
man.
be mad at
It's over.
me, the only reason he knows to be mad at me is because I exposed it.
Okay, right.
Think about how hypocritical that is. So yeah, this has happened to me in other ways. I've been accused of being a
Right.
perpetrator.
And
I'm like,
just to yeah. And just to say the last thing, you said she apologized to you. Yes, Mitch said she apologized. Mitch did not say she deserved to apologize to him. He was just saying she was a little aware of how ridiculous the audit
oh
was.
yeah. No, we like apologize to each other.
Right.
And Lori P saying you were not the victim. No, I wasn't the victim.
Right.
I was being victimized. She was the
Yes, I agree
victim,
with that.
and
Yes.
Marty was the perpetrator, and you weren't there. So
Right.
and I have in the words of Desmond Tutu, everybody needs forgiveness. Like, how do you come back? The way you come back, number one, you stop doing whatever you were doing that was causing harm.
Sure.
And then you do whatever you can to make sure the harm never happens again.
Whistleblow. Right.
And if you object to
that.
my doing either of those things, why are you even in this chat? Like, what is the point?
Right. She did say she apologized. So cool.
I mean, I was in a position
Lori's
where
fine.
whatever. We don't have to deal with that anymore. She's not going to stop.
I
I never said that. I never said that I was the victim.
No, I don't think you did. And that's my thing is purely democratic. So I think a little controversy is interesting.
I actually felt that I was being made to participate, that I was being forced to participate in the victimization of a 14-year-old girl.
Yes,
because verbal sexual assault is sexual assault. And I felt that I was being made to participate in it, which is one of the reasons I left and one of the reasons that I blew the whistle.
Right. Oh, Lori's apologizing to me. Lori, you don't need to apologize to me. Everybody can make themselves heard.
It's interesting. It's good to know how people react.
It is. That's why the lives that I will have is a little more interesting because again, it's completely open gate. And I like it that way. But I'm glad you explained that because you do have to explain to people how you were brainwashed in that same regard. And now, your mission is to expose the injustice that this 14-year-old received. So you agree. I mean, you'd agree as sexual. I mean, I'm sure you would agree that Marty Rathbun verbally, by saying the banging dogs and all this crazy stuff, verbally did sexually assault this 14-year-old.
Yeah, and verbal sexual assault is recognized. Yeah, it's recognized as a crime against a minor. It's 100%. It's a felony. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, all right. So we have a million fun topics. So I appreciate you bearing with me.
Okay, good.
Early 70s. So here's a fun thing. I want to talk about some of the communications people, because I have done journalism and have listened with deep fascination to Heber, to David Miscavige, obviously. Well, he wasn't a communications guy, but to Heber, to Tommy Davis, to Mike Render, even to this African-American woman who I want to talk about what her deal is, who kind of does some YouTube stuff for Scientology these days. But so Heber Jen, so his wife, he had a first wife before Karen Della Carriere. I never knew that. What was the first wife like? I heard she was kind of a mother hen.
I don't know that she was the first wife. I mean, she was the first wife that I knew of. Oh, I get it. Lori, how do you feel about Aaron Smith Levin? Oh, I get it. So now they're all blowing up. Okay, we're going to just forget about all that.
You can skip that one. You're fine.
So Lori, I'm just going to say it one more time. I was forced to help abuse verbally a 14-year-old girl. Okay. I have apologized to her. She's apologized to me. I've ratted Marty out for fucking doing it. I don't know what else you possibly want.
I think
I
Marty's the
don't know what you
perpetrator.
want, but whatever it is you want, go ahead and say it in the chat, and I'll.
Well, no need
So
to hang on it. But
okay, so no, so Yvonne Gench, who originally her name was Gillum, she had a previous husband. Her daughter, Janice Grady, who has a channel called Peeling the Onion with Mark Fisher. I
okay,
knew her. She was one of the original messengers. They were part of, in the 50s, I think it was the 50s, maybe the 60s. Yeah, maybe late 50s, early 60s. Scientology was outlawed in Victoria in Australia, right?
I didn't know that in the whole state of Victoria, huh?
Yeah, the whole state of Victoria, it was outlawed. So
They
you
were
had
ahead
this,
of their time, being in
yeah,
59,
yeah,
60 to 61.
yeah.
God, I wonder how they saw the red flags way back then.
I don't know, but unfortunately, it's not that way anymore. So you
No,
have this kind of a diaspora of about 200 families that fled Victoria, and they all went to St. Hill, England, right?
I didn't know. That's fascinating. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And so Yvonne was one of those people. She was one of the first people to join the Sea Org, and while she was
Huh,
on the one of the ships with Hubbard, uh, he was talking a lot about how you had to appeal to celebrities, you had to recruit celebrities, that it was
right.
very important to the future of
They're well read,
Scientology.
right.
Yeah, so I think because he was kind of chasing after her, like he had like sexual
Funny.
intentions towards her.
Okay.
She literally fled the ship, and she went to LA, and she started Celebrity Center. She founded Celebrity
Wow.
Center.
That's a big
And she
workaround.
actually was this incredibly caring person who was one of the most beloved people ever in Scientology. And she started Celebrity Center just as like an office to help artists to come help platform their careers. And then it kind of became a church, and it became by 1973, when I ended up there, it was really a happening place.
Hey, random question, just because you're talking about happening in the early 70s and some of the cool music. L. Ron Hubbard's daughter, Diana, did she? What is
Oh
her
yeah,
album actually decent? As a fan of that music, was she actually like a decent musician?
I can't remember. I mean,
She
she was
dropped
a
the whole
competent.
vinyl.
Yeah, she was a competent piano player. I remember when she did it.
Yeah,
I saw her in concert. She actually
you
opened at the
did. That's
Palladium.
cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
she opened at the Palladium.
Wow,
It
she
was probably
did
all.
that. So she was
Well, no, no,
pretty.
no. No. But listen, no, hold on. Don't you're jumping too far ahead. She opened for Chick Corea at the
That's
Palladium, and
Scientologist, right?
the whole thing was probably just paid for by
Yes. You
Scientology,
say
and it was
Chick
probably
Corea, I'm like, that's impressive. Then I remember, Chick Corea is a very committed Scientologist. Right. That's funny. So interesting. So she had this way of kind of helping people, reviving them.
She was amazing. I mean, she
Right.
I actually consider that Yvonne Chen saved my life, like
Right.
literally, because
Wow.
like I didn't go to Narconon. I literally lived with the staff at Celebrity Center for 6 weeks and got
Wow.
off drugs. And they basically told me, the person that was my person there said, if you if you apply yourself to this, you can get off drugs, and then at the end of that, you can decide if you want to stay in Scientology. Today, if somebody said that, they would be sent immediately to the RPF or wherever they send people today.
Funny.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
Yes, I didn't want to leave. I mean, I was like,
right.
when I went in there, I was traumatized. I didn't sleep for weeks. I weighed 127 pounds. I was like 6 foot tall. I was
Wow.
emaciated. I was just like, my girlfriend had died. I was like, it was really horrible. And 6 weeks later, I was sleeping like a baby. I'd gained 30
Wow.
pounds.
Wow.
And so I left. I went back to film school. I graduated from California Institute of the Arts
Sure.
with a
So you
degree
had
in
your
film.
own life. I assume, and this is interesting too. Once you graduated and you were having the academic credentials, were you still receiving auditing by Scientology the entire time?
Not so much, because I
Interesting.
put a lot of time into concentrating on my career, and I was
Right.
very, very, very busy. So there was probably a period of about 10 years there where I was sort of like kind of a regular, like kind of maybe a mid-level in terms of interaction public
Interesting.
Scientologist. I was
Okay.
in and out. I would do stuff. I was traveling,
Right.
for work, and it's like, so yeah, but
So
I
you're
did
in it.
continue it, and I identified as a Scientologist for all during that
Right.
time.
Right. And so you're in there. How did people get aware of your film? When did you start working the film stuff? Are you talking 80s, or have you been in there for what, half a decade? And then that was the.
Well, I was a student at Celebrity Center, and then I done some stuff at A. Yeah, but I was basically home base. I was a student at Celebrity Center because that's where I got in. And so people knew me there. They knew what I did. They knew I was a commercial director. There weren't a lot of directors in Scientology. I was like working pretty regularly directing television.
So it's kind of, and so you were doing outside television commercials, I assume.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, big clients. Yeah, international clients. I did work in Japan. I did work in Europe. I did, nothing to do with Scientology. Nothing to do with Scientology.
So here's a question. One of the hilarious things that people tend to have consternation with you, which I think is bullshit, is that they don't like that you actually made money.
No, I made so much less money working for them than I would have made. I'm
sure.
People are going to even hate me more for this. I made them hundreds of millions of dollars, and they want to bitch and moan about what they paid me. It's insane. Right. They are still making so much money off of my work that I wish I could figure out a way to shut that shit down, but I can't. So that's a bunch of bullshit. The only reason that the internet knows that they paid me a decent amount of money, what some people would say like is a decent amount of money, is because I shared it with Aaron.
Right. You shared what you got paid. So, right.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden he made a big deal about it. And this is nothing against Aaron. Nope. Aaron is a friend of mine. I got no problem with Aaron. He's a great guy. What he's done is amazing.
Well, people miss it over.
But he did go, well, you wanted to be there and you were being paid. Well, you wanted to be paid too. I mean, okay, you were making $40 a week and I was making whatever, but and this is nothing against Aaron, but when he joined the Sea Org, he owned a car, he owned a house, he had money in the bank. Like he didn't have to join the Sea Org. He wanted to do it. But here's the point. Here is the point, and this is why I have no problem with Aaron. Aaron was, you could theoretically, he was born in the Scientology. Yeah, he was like 4 years older. So same thing. He was born in Scientology. How is that different from being brainwashed in Scientology? Some people were born in, some people were brainwashed in. How is that different?
Sometimes,
unless you're going to go, unless you want to start trauma comparing.
Right. And I don't think he is. I think it's some people who follow him.
No, not Aaron. Not Aaron. Aaron doesn't. He's not.
Right. And there's some people who want to split hairs and say your trauma is not as intense as their trauma.
That's right.
You. We don't want you to be in the space, be in the movement. You made some money. Go fuck yourself. Even though you have this incredible, because you were close to the top. All these other people, a lot, except of course there's some, Mark Headley is an exception. There are a fair number of them. But in many of these people in this YouTube space, they didn't get to know the people on the top. And that's why it's so fascinating to have that conversation with
them. And that's okay. Everybody
be out here and telling your story.
Well, but the thing is that my original purpose, like I went onto YouTube originally for all the wrong reasons. I wrote a book. I thought the book was important. It was important to me. I thought it was a story that needed to be told. And so I was invited onto YouTube as a way of promoting my book. And then people went, you just want to sell a book. Like all of a sudden that became a bad thing. Right. And so, then, I sort of pulled back and I am coming back. I'm working on an audiobook. So I've been
I hope you do. And, people will try to split hairs and create divisions, even when there aren't any, because I don't think he has a personal division or you a personal division with him. And some people just try to,
no, not at all. Not at all.
So, continue, man. I mean, it's super important what you're doing.
But the thing is, for me, my purpose in being on YouTube is to try to create a space so that people understand cultic, the what happens, like how you get drawn into a cult, how not just cultic abuse, but also relational abuse. And I've had a very intense mental health journey coming out of Scientology. And before I got into Scientology, I was like studying Eastern religion when I was 15 years old before I did heroin. And I was this kind of person. So when you leave, you sort of end up being that person again. And so it's more important to me to be, rather than, that sort of reporting on things, it's important to me to be shedding light on how these things happen and how you can heal and what you need to do. I mean, there's a lot of people who live Scientology that have not processed 1 minute of having been in Scientology, and they don't think they need to. So and I'm not saying that they do. I'm just saying I did, and I would very much like to share that with people because I think it would be helpful.
Yeah. I want to ask you, OBG Foster, who's been a big supporter in the chat. Not most people are big supporters in the chat, but I just took out the ones that weren't. But OBG Foster has a great question. Did the technical stuff you learned in film school ever make you question the e-meter? God,
What?
that's a question I would
Because
have
I knew
never
how to
thought.
focus a motion. I knew how to shoot a motion picture camera. You know how to use a light meter. So
Right, I
here,
guess.
I mean, that's an
Are they
interesting question. I mean, look, here's the deal. Here's the deal. I should probably do some content on this. The answer to your question
Yeah.
is no, it did not. What I learned technically in film, and you learn a lot of technical stuff when you study film.
Sure.
Maybe even more so now because everything is digital. But I mean, here's the deal. The e-meter, it does something. I'm trying to figure it out. I think what it does, it creates a feedback loop between you and the person that's guiding you through the session, which they call an auditor, right? It creates this
Feedback
kind
loop
of
would be the vibrate or the
like a biofeedback loop, and
Right.
you're indoctrinated into what the session is supposed to do,
Right.
right? And it's supposed to make you feel good. So it's this very clever biofeedback loop that starts to generate dopamine after a while. These reward hormones, it starts to generate
That's
those in your
right.
brain. Okay. And this is it gets people
Yeah,
addicted. And so I haven't figured it out yet, but it's not like the e-meter does nothing. It does actually do something. And the thing is that there's this thing in Scientology, it's called see a thought. They do this on the street. It's a little, you could go into any organization that'll do it for you. You hold the cans, right? Squeeze my cans, right? You hold the cans and then they pinch you just enough so it hurts a little, and the needle does a movement. And then they say, you wait a minute for the needle to die down, and they say, recall that pinch. And you think of the pinch, and the needle does the same thing. And this is infallible, and it's just some kind of parlor trick, but it works. But
it's like
this is
Sylvia Brown, or
yeah, but this is the dangerous thing about the meter, is that it's up to the auditor and the auditor's training to decide what that needle movement means.
Right.
That's what's so dangerous about it. So if there's a movement on the needle and the auditor says, so, what did you do that you don't want to tell me? And the person says nothing. And it really is nothing. But the needle goes like this. Then the auditor says, well, what was that? So your truth doesn't matter. The meter matters. So that's the thing that people need to understand. Not whether or not we were stupid and didn't get that it doesn't do anything, because it does do something. It's once you believe that it works, you fall into this kind of feedback loop, and it does create these positive kind of reward chemicals in your brain.
Yeah, so, OBG again, Doug Kramer, rest in peace, said it was a method of hypnosis. Good way to put it.
Yeah, it is. It is, because if you think about hypnosis, hypnosis is anchored to two things, which are repetition and fixation. You got to get a person to fixate, and then you have to repeat something, and that's how you hypnotize people. And Hubbard knew that. So every process in Scientology has this aspect of fixation, where you're fixated, right? And repetition, where the same thing is being done over and over.
Fascinating. What was the thing? All right. So we were talking about. He has a really interesting question, which got me totally sidetracked. We were talking about your early days working with Yvonne. What was Heber Jensch like back in the day?
Well, Heber was a really gracious guy. He was a big guy.
That's what's interesting. He was the last of the gracious spokesperson.
Yeah.
So he was really like that in person.
100%. The last time I saw Heber was probably Heber was you could guess from his name, he was from a polygamous family. He was
he's LDS. But
no. He wasn't LDS. He was the other
FLDS or right.
No. They're called whatever they are.
LeBaron clan? LeBaron, maybe?
No, I don't know what he was from, but he had like 25 brothers and sisters, and he was also an accomplished singer.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So the film Paint Your Wagon, right?
Don't know it.
Okay, Paint Your Wagon is a very famous musical, and they made it into a film starring Lee Marvin and Clint Eastwood.
Sure.
And the only reason I went to see it is because it was shot by William Fraker, who shot Dusty and Sweet McGee. But Heber was one of the in the chorus.
Wow.
He sang in that film, and he was a very accomplished singer, and he was a great Yeah, he was a great spokesperson. He's a very gracious guy. The last time I remember, I knew him like from the beginning of my Scientology career. So the last time I saw Heber, it was at Gold. I think it was in about 2019, maybe 2020. It might have even been 2021 because that was no
recent.
The last time I was at Gold was like January, February 2021.
Wow,
no,
so
when was lockdown? No, wait a minute. When was lockdown? 2020.
2020.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 2020, not 2021.
Not that long.
But I saw Heber.
You saw him that as recently as 2020.
Yeah, or 2019 maybe. 2019. Yeah, and they were walking him into a room. They had these barometric. Are they called
he couldn't even walk at this point. So
he was on a walker. He had a walker, and somebody was helping him. And they have these. What do they call these oxygenated chambers? Is it a bariatric chamber? I keep getting that. And they bought a bunch of them because Miscavige likes to sleep in them. Michael Jackson used them.
Yes, I did hear about that. Yes.
Yeah, so they have a couple of them up at Gold, and they were helping Heber into one. But he saw me and he said hello, and he said it with the same sparkle in his eyes as when I was 23 years old and I met him at Celebrity Center.
He still had it.
He was always just this most gracious guy. There were a couple of guys up there like that, and then there were a bunch of really evil people.
I'd imagine. So what was the daily life, if you had any idea, of Heber in 2020? What did they do with him? Everybody talks about Shelley, but like poor Heber, man, were they really?
Well, no, he was just being managed by what's called the MLO's office, which is the medical liaison. They're the kind of fake medical department.
Iron Lung, yes, Peter, thank you.
Barometric, thank you very much, Peter Anderson. Yeah, so they were just managing him, probably giving him Scientology assists, making sure that he ate. And then I think when they became concerned that he was going to die, they moved him into an old age home because they don't want.
He's in he's in some sort of care now.
So, because
that's interesting, but they didn't really torture him or do anything.
No. Well, no, he was in the hole.
I know, right?
Yeah, for years he was being tortured in there.
Right. But he got out of the hole, and I wonder. So he's not even zombie-like. He was still like a present person when you saw him.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Last time I saw him.
And so he still believes in all of it and everything.
I mean, the thing about that kind of indoctrination is that even me, I had seen so much bad shit, and I stayed because I didn't want to be unemployed. And don't even start with me in terms of the shame and the guilt that I've had to process for staying so long just because I kept figuring out a way that I could make a transition and not be unemployed. That's just, that's a kind of, that's like a form of self-abuse. So I don't need to hear about it from anybody. So if anybody wants to chime in on that, please don't bother. Because believe me, I've self-immolated enough on that point. But, but anyway, I forgot. I went into a.
No. I was asking about him because he was, one of those early figures, and I always wondered, like, did he believe at the end, or
here's what I was going to say. In spite of everything I'd seen and everything I'd been through, when I left, the indoctrination is so bad that you feel like you failed this group. Even though that they're horrible and they're abusive, this trauma bond is so horrible and it's a little bit like, you talk to soldiers and they're like, well, why were you fighting? And they're like, I was fighting for the guy in the trench next to me. And so there's a little bit of that because, there's all these people that you worked with. I mean, I worked with the film crew up there who, when I first went up there, they'd all been banned into the kitchen by Miscavige. They weren't allowed near their tools because they couldn't make a film and their lives were horrible. And then I came up and they were all allowed out and we made a film and all of a sudden their lives were better. So I was like, I was like a good guy because I made their lives better. Much more survivable. And so then I was like, oh, I let them all down. I can't leave. They'll be locked back in the kitchen again. So it's a really complex thing. And I wasn't in the Sea Org. I wasn't per se restricted to the base. So, for somebody like Heber, for a Sea Org member, it's just got to be 1,000 times worse. That sense of like, I'm in the hole and you're being tortured, but you're thinking I deserve it. You know what I'm saying? You're
right, and that's fascinating. Probably still.
Yeah.
And why do you think they transitioned him away from being that main spokesperson? Because I've seen some of the early interviews in the 80s, high 70s, and he actually smiles and comes off as warm, and like the grandfather you wish you had. in some sense. He was not
Yeah.
antagonistic. And then you go from
Right.
him to Mike Rinder, who Mr. Attack Dog, and then Tommy Davis,
Yeah.
Mr. Chihuahua Attack Dog. Even worse. And then, of course, Miscavige's antagonist. And I always wondered, would Scientology have had some better press relations if they kept
Well,
Heber for as long as possible? Somebody
it
like
never, yeah, it never could under Miscavige, because Miscavige is an incredibly jealous person. He's a very narcissistic, very psychopathic. And so if anybody got any power, then he would have to destroy them.
right,
So Heber was a really well-liked guy and really did a good job at what he did. So
right,
Miscavige tried to destroy him. And he did, he did that with Mike. He destroyed Mike.
right,
He kind of destroyed Tommy. Tommy kind of
what happened with
escaped.
Tommy? That's a whole weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I knew Tommy really well.
God, what was he like? Was he just as much of a?
Well, I got
Was he
along with him great. I got along with him great because I was kind of like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like I knew Tommy when he dropped out of college, and he was married to this beautiful young Belgian woman, and he was a celebrity wrangler at CC.
Ann Archer's son, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
Ann Archer's. Yeah, he's Ann Archer's son.
Actress. Right.
Yeah, and so he was, and then he caught Miscavige's eye. He's like, oh, he's a good-looking guy, and he already comes with, $5,000 suits and a $150,000 BMW. He's like ready-made to be on Miscavige's team.
So Miscavige saw that visual, and he was like, "You're perfect."
That's what I always thought.
Right.
Yeah, because I remember the day that, I never got asked to do these. I call them the flying monkeys. I call them the, the guys that Miscavige sends out to do his bidding, when Paul Haggis did his thing, right? And and so then I don't remember who it was. It was either Tommy or this other very evil person by the name of Dave Bloomberg. The difference is Tommy's a really smart guy and Dave Bloomberg's a fucking clown. Okay. Literally he's like a soccer hooligan in an expensive suit,
Funny, he was another spokesperson as well, or
no, Dave is a hatchet. He's a hatchet man.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you couldn't let him be a spokesperson. He would embarrass you. But somebody came and grabbed me, and they're saying, we're going to Paul Haggis's office when Paul had an office in West LA, right? We're going to go to Paul Haggis's office, and we're going to talk him. We're going to try to talk him down, right? Because Paul had sent this letter of resignation out, and Paul is a very gracious guy, and he just wanted to be heard. He was really pissed off because of the treatment of his two gay daughters, and he wanted to be heard. He wanted Tommy Davis to go on record as saying, we are not anti-LGBTQIA.
I don't know any of this. Did they didn't treat Paul Haggis's daughters well, or did they? Or
no, he has two gay daughters who I've known since I knew them since they were little girls, and they're just delightful people. Cool. And so there was a thing that happened with Prop 8, right? Prop 8 in California was
equality, sure.
Yeah, so there was a thing happened at the San Diego org where somebody at the San Diego org made a public statement against Prop 8 or in favor of Prop 8. I forget which one made you
Prop 8. Prop 8 was, oddly enough, Prop 8 would have restricted things. So in favor.
Yeah, so yes on Prop 8, right? So somebody at the San Diego org was promoting.
Open up a can of worms.
Totally, because totally, right? And so Paul just wanted Tommy to say, that's wrong. We shouldn't have done it. And he wanted to make a statement because
I bet
his own daughters were ostracized for being gay. They were treated separately at Celebrity Center, because Scientology is very anti-gay. And so Paul was perfectly willing to meet with, anyway, I don't know if he wants me to tell the story, but I communicated with Paul recently, and there's something that happened in our meeting, and I'm the only person who's no longer in Scientology that was at that meeting that can testify to what happened. Okay. And I'm going to tell you what it is. It's in my book. It's absolutely disgusting. So Paul was like, yeah, I'll see you. So I get this, hey, come on, we're going out to Paul Haggis's office. So it's me and Tommy and this writer that I worked with, this guy named whatever, it doesn't matter. He's not even that great a writer, but a guy that I worked with. And who was a pro, not a Sea Org guy. He was a hired guy like me. And Dave Bloomberg. And so we went out to Paul's office and we went into the conference room and we sat down and we just talked. And Paul was just like, look, Tommy, like he ain't going to back down on this, but you need to make a statement. You need to make a statement. The reason that I resigned from Scientology is because of this issue. And you need to make a statement. Right. And so for some reason, I'd have to look at my notes. Paul brought up the name Martin Luther King Jr. Okay. And he's talking to him and he says, listen, everybody makes mistakes. And he says also, he's talking about the beatings. I know about the beatings. I know that Miscavige has been beating his staff. And
this is when he was still in Scientology.
Paul?
Yeah, he's saying he knows about these beatings.
Well, he knew about them when he was in. He'd heard about them.
Okay, right.
He never witnessed them. I witnessed physical violence against staff members.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But not beating, but I witnessed Miscavige's physical violence against staff members. And so he brings this thing up. He says, look, everybody makes mistakes. I think at that time, Paul was working on a script about Martin Luther King Jr. So I think it was on his mind. And he said, like, even Martin Luther King Jr. made mistakes. And Dave Bloomberg, I kid you not, he jumped up out of his chair and he looked at Paul and he said, how dare you compare a great man like David Miscavige to Martin Luther King Jr.? Yeah. And it was just like, no, and it's like, no, this is the attitude. No, you don't know. This is the attitude. This is the attitude. Like, it's, I mean, these are terrible people that are just like, they're incredibly brainwashed.
Really do have to be that brainwash, really, is Miscavige.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's all
right, let me ask you, because you knew Miscavige somewhat well.
Yeah, I did.
Does he, this is something nobody's ever asked. Me might have never talked about it because, of course, Scientology is their own internal world and everything else is not important. But did he have any politics? Did he, did he lean conservative? Did he have any racist point of views, anti-immigrant?
Yeah, he was totally a racist.
He was?
He and his dad. Well, okay, let me just qualify that. Does using lots of racial slurs and telling lots of racial jokes make somebody a racist? Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Okay, so did he identify as a racist?
Call people like racial slurs and stuff.
Oh yeah. He didn't, and he really didn't like Jews. He didn't.
Wow,
like
really?
Jews. Yeah, which is weird because he had all these Jews on his staff, and my background is Jewish, and I did a ton of myself. Yeah, and I did a ton of great stuff for him. But he used to refer to, when the Lawrence Wright article came out, remember, in the New Yorker before he wrote the book?
Famous.
Right?
Yeah.
When he did the interview with Paul Haggis, the apostate, right? He did that thing. Ever since that happened, Miscavige would always refer to those goddamn New York Jews. That whole group of people. I mean, I don't think Lawrence Wright is Jewish, but that whole sort of group of people that control,
very waspy.
Yeah, he's obviously not Jewish, but that's anybody could be Jewish. But he really was in a stink about these New York Jews that controlled the press and said all these bad things about him. And he also had a big problem with the Hollywood
he got
Jews.
along with Farrakhan so well. Why him and Farrakhan are,
well, because they're both Jew haters.
Well,
it could be.
Out of many.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think because I don't think that explains that. I think basically Miscavige is apolitical, asexual, a-hole.
So he wouldn't care. So he wouldn't care if it was Clinton or Bush if you knew him in the 90s, or never gave a thought, or Gore.
No. Yeah, politics was because they're above politics. Right?
I was going to say it's beneath them, isn't it? Right.
Yeah, it's beneath them. When Trump got elected, and somehow the demographics of Scientology had started to lean very right. Like I was in this,
Joy Villa, singer. Republican,
Yeah. She was a little Trump star. But I was like in this minority of like pro-gay rights, very liberal, raised by communists, Jewish.
Right.
Like my mother was like, "What the fuck are you doing in Scientology?" It was just anyway. It was whatever. Um, but the demographics had started to lean really right. Like there's this one woman, I can't think of her name. There's video of her on January 6th with a megaphone. She's an attorney. I can't think of her name. I mean, she was there. She fled to Mexico with her family, took a vacation, when the shit hit the fan. She's like an anti-vaxxer. She's a big attorney, anti-vaxxer, very pro-Trump. She was literally at the insurrection with a megaphone.
Hardcore.
She never went in. I don't think she went in. I think she was just on the grounds. So Scientology, demographically, it sort of was kind of liberal in the 70s, and then it sort of became more libertarian, and then it became more conservative. And then it was like, okay, here's the deal. Like Los Angeles is divided up into the voting precincts, right? Okay. There's only one. I don't know how many there are. There are many, many precincts, voting precincts in Los Angeles.
30.
Only at least only one of those precincts went for Trump. And that was the one where Scientology headquarters is.
Ha! Really?
Yeah, that's a fact. That's just that's just a fact. You can look that shit up. So
Miscavige ever comments on it or no?
No, but he was freaking out because it was starting to be dissension among Scientologists. Scientologists were starting to polarize because remember, Trump was such a polarizing character that even within a group like Scientology, it was starting to polarize the members, right? And of course, a lot of people were like, whatever. But so Miscavige, he actually made a reference. He wrote a speech in the New Year's after Trump was elected. Miscavige gave a speech, and he made a very long-winded, very oblique reference to the fact that this is not the time we should be thinking about politics. He was concerned about the Trump, what should we call it? The Trump effect. Right. The polarizing effect.
You're going to be more loyal to Trump than him. That's first.
Well, not so much that, but you would have
parishioners, the other ones, right?
Yeah, and maybe people would be less willing to join.
Right.
Yeah, it does. But it doesn't matter because that's been published. And plus, everybody knows that it's an anti-gay group, and so nobody wants to have anything to do with it.
Right. I mean, it's written in their scripture, which is now, of course. I mean, here's the other fun thing that I want to ask. So
hold on. What were you going to say? It's now, of course, what?
It's written in the scripture. So now, of course, you can find it.
Yeah, it is.
Which is why is one of the reasons for the massive decline. I think that some could say it was starting with the anonymous protest. Some say started earlier, some say started later. But I guess it's like you had no way in the 80s and the 70s. I assume you have to find out about the Scientological belief of gay people deep, way into the whole investment of it, right? So I assume you would
no.
So you knew that, but you were still like, okay, I'll put that to the side.
I mean, look, I
don't blame you. You're brainwashed. It makes sense.
I survived 2 suicide attempts. My head was pretty fucked up.
I'm sure.
Okay, so
sure. No, I'm not blaming you.
Yeah. So it's amazing. What's that? Yeah, because I'll tell you why, just to qualify that. It's in the Dianetics book. And Dianetics
I guess it would be one. So if you read the full book, right, it's not in the
you may not read that book. You may not read that book for a while, but it's out in plain sight because it's in the Dianetics book. It's at goddamn public bookstores. I sold 10 million copies of a book that talks about how, quote unquote, the homosexual is like a sex pervert. It's just like horrible stuff. And how did I justify that? I don't know. How did I in my mind, I mean, what I think is, I always sort of thought, well, I don't know. I don't want to get into it. People are just going to eviscerate me for even saying this. But the thing is that it was written in the 50s. So I'm like, well, it was written in the 50s,
Sort of
and the
its time.
cops were like going into gay clubs and they were beating people on the head. And I'll bet if Hubbard ever came back, he'd probably revise it. You kind of do this little dance in the back of your mind. You do this crazy shit because you're really, really brainwashed. It's like, it's like, and it's tough to come back. I mean, I know people that don't want to associate with me because I wrote it, because I was once in Scientology.
Right. But then, if they don't want to associate with you, then people can't associate with Aaron or Kelly or any
What's that?
I'm saying if people don't want to associate you because of your supposed past sins, then people should not be able to associate with Aaron or Kelly Copter or any of these well-known figures.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's
I get where you're coming from completely.
Yeah.
But that is fascinating, right? And you do, I mean, it's an interesting thing because but part of me thinks like the anti-homosexuality is bizarre as included, and I'll only say this, and it's a weird connection to make, but one could argue the early 50s was one of the eras, the start of the era where people began to follow secular guidebooks and movements. And with L. Ron Hubbard's relationship to Jack Parsons and people in the satanic world, I will say one of the good things that they supported in the 1950s and the late 40s was that homosexuality was okay. So I am wondering like why L. Ron Hubbard wanted to include it in Dianetics, because he was not catering to the churchgoers, who was probably 90% of the country at that time, but there was this burgeoning even before Woodstock, the hippie movement, the beginning of the beat era. There was this movement of people in the 1950s who were like, I'm not following traditional life. And it's like, well, why did L. Ron Hubbard still include all the anti-gay stuff? It's even back in the 50s, it was not in vogue for the new agey thing, which was a thing even back in the 50s. Well, I probably don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't take it out of the DSM until when was it, in the 70s?
Oh, that's right. No, of course, and it was in the psychological handbooks, and certainly,
and so the other thing is Hubbard took a lot. I'm kind of just riffing on this now, Dodge,
right?
But I think this could have something to do with it. Hubbard took a lot from the military. There were two things that he was infatuated with. He was infatuated with the idea that he was some kind of war hero, and he was infatuated with the idea that he was some kind of great scientist. And then there's all these other little shiny baubles about being an aviator and an artist and all this other complete
and it's like he dabbled in the Satanism, like he dabbled in the being an
yeah, but that was an early, like a youthful phase that he went through. That was
he was not an established figure at that point.
No. Yeah, and he never met Aleister Crowley and a lot of those people, and he ripped off Jack Parsons and stole his girlfriend and his business and like all kinds of bad shit. But the thing is that, back the thinking in the military, especially in intelligence, and Hubbard was very much ear to the ground when it came to the standards and procedures of U.S. intelligence, right? It was very much thought of that being a homosexual was a liability because it made you open to blackmail. So he was, that's really the tune that he was singing.
Right. So it was tactful, is more tact.
Yeah. Now, of course, today, today, I'm sure the CIA, because they're always like during the civil rights movement, their number one target was young black males because they made great agents, because everybody foreign powers would believe that they turned against their own country. So they're pretty devious. So, today I'm sure they're targeting homosexuals for recruitment because they're like, and whatever. I mean, I believe in affirmative action. There should be gay CIA agents. I mean, that's what you want to do. You should be allowed to do that.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. But no, I always wonder where these little nuggets come from of,
I never really thought about it, but he took a lot from the military. There's a lot of policy that a lot of us learned and did that, like there's a thing called the completed staff work, a CSW, which is the exact form by which you write a proposal to get permission to get something or to acquire something. And one day somebody handed me this booklet up at Gold. It was the Air Force manual, and it was called the same thing, completed staff work. It's out of the Air Force manual. So he took all this stuff from the military, and I'm sure he took their attitude about same sex.
Interesting. Interesting. But they've never. I mean, that's still in. I guess you can't change Dianetics. You can't really secretly delete things out of it.
No, you can't, and it's not like it's not like, yeah, they're not going to change anything. That's why Scientology is just doomed. It's one of the reasons it's doomed. I mean, the Mormons have managed. When I was they've changed a lot of things. I remember being up at the Olympics, and whenever that was, 2002, and the Mormons, they banned proselytizing during the Olympics. That was part of the requirement from the Olympic Committee, no proselytizing. And so I used to go up there a lot for the Sundance Film Festivals. I was walking up and down, I don't know, in Park City, walking up and down Main Street, and there were these fundamental FLD, the fundamental guys. They were sneaking in their pamphlets. Yeah, they were sneaking pamphlets in, and they're anti-Mormon pamphlets because they want people to join the fundamentalists. And one of the points of the pamphlet, it said that the Mormons have changed. If you look at the Book of Mormon, the original Book of Mormon, they've changed 1,000 items from the original one.
Yes, haven't they ever? Yes.
Yeah, and Scientology will never do that. I mean, Miscavige might do it because he's changed a lot of things, but he doesn't change them to make the scene better or to survive or to have a state or anything like that.
Right. Fascinating. And I heard Miscavige is pretty homophobic himself anyway.
You've heard what?
Miscavige is pretty homophobic himself anyway.
Extremely.
Or at least use gay as an insult, certainly, to people.
Yeah, no, he was, he used to use, I'm not going to use the words.
No need.
I'm not going to do it. But he used to use very homophobic slur language. Right. Like, when Mike Rinder escaped, I remember hearing him say, "Oh, Mike can just go and something, and that's how he can make money." Like he's said, "Oh, he could just go perform, homosexual."
Do you ever find, like, when you were talking to him, that he had this almost like childish frat boy sense of humor? Like all of these jokes that I've ever heard sound like a 16-year-old would say them.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, he was. I mean, he joined the Sea Org when he was, I don't know, 12, 30, 40, 50, something like that.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like that's where you stop. You just stop there. You don't.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Right, so that was the last time he was in the real worlds and whatever, right? So it's like.
Yeah, and his dad was kind of similar. He was kind of a band leader, a trumpet player, was kind of like a lounge lizard kind of guy, and in Philly, and had really bad taste or no taste. I mean, that is one thing about Miscavige. He's got like zero taste. If somebody didn't give him a book or tell him what was cool he wouldn't know. And then once he finds out and owns it, then everybody has to do it. Like this is the way to do it because Dave said to do it this way. This is how you tie a tie. It's got to be like this. Crease has to be perfect. Are you going to go to cramming? I mean, yeah.
Was he responsible for creating all the uniforms and stuff? I always wondered that with the.
Well, it was his idea, but I can tell you. Okay, so the uniforms they're wearing now at the cosplay orgs, these hideous uniforms.
Yeah, well, what is the deal with the gold? It's like the gold's lining, and it's a two-tone tie with the top.
Yeah, well, they're color coded. They're color coded based on the church. I was going to look the guy's name up, but okay. So here's the deal. So those were done probably in 20. I can't remember, 2014, whenever those came out, maybe earlier than that. Whenever they came out, they were designed by this guy. His name's Richard somebody or other. I'd have to look it up. And his big claim to fame at that point, his most recent thing, was he designed all the wardrobe for Delta Airlines, right?
Interesting.
Okay, does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so this guy had. Okay, so I looked at this recently because I was curious. Okay, so Delta Airlines is now 4 generations away from that wardrobe. In other words, they've gone through 4 entire iterations of updates with 4 different designers.
Right.
Since that guy. And
Right.
the thing about Miscavige, which is the same thing with Hubbard, they actually believe that you can do something once right and you never have to do it again.
Touch it. Right.
Yeah. And the second you do it, I mean, that shit looks so out of date. Like if you look at the new Delta stuff, it's all sort of athleisure based, and it's really like very, very contemporary, and but still very tasteful, and just.
You know,
So
like
yeah, I thought that was really funny.
But that's interesting.
What's that?
And that is one I thought it was too casual, the Delta uniforms.
Oh, the new ones?
Yeah, I don't know. As a
Yeah,
men's fashion guy, there's a part of me that likes that uniform with the two-tone. And
yeah, no, I know. I think this guy, Richard, he did a good job. I mean, he's a really good designer. He did all the ideal work stuff. I know, because I had to put on Miscavige. He said, I want you to put on a fashion show. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, do like a Paris runway, banners, crowds. I need to do a video to present this to all the orgs. So I had to do this stupid fashion thing.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was fun. Hired a bunch of models, you know. Yeah.
That sounds kind of cool. But again, you say David Miscavige asexuality, assuming he wasn't interested in any of the models or anything. Or
yeah, I don't have. Yeah, I've never been able to really determine with certainty his sexuality.
So that's what we talked about last time. What is the deal with him and Lou, do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah, is there a relationship? Is it
I don't really know. I mean, I just know what I've seen. I mean, I don't know what they were doing in that bedroom all night long.
Right.
I don't know, but he's been
never get like touchy with each other. They never like stare into each other's eyes.
No, I've never really seen that. But what I've seen is, hold on, I'm gonna have to make sure it's not.
Take your time. Yeah, don't let me keep it
forever.
Okay,
fine. So no, I got time. It's totally fine. No, I mean, here's the thing. Like when I knew Shelley, when she was part of his entourage, Shelley would always be behind him slightly in a subservient position with a pad of paper or a tape recorder, right?
Right.
Lou would always be slightly ahead of him off to the side. Like a gatekeeper, right?
Funny. So Lou's a grizzled veteran. Been around for a while too.
Yeah, glowering at people, right? Like she's going to take the bullet, right? So it was a whole different dynamic than he and Shelley, way different. And you know, so I don't know, sexual relationship, maybe, probably, I think, in a very kind of perverse way.
Right. In the way that you must have met Shelley a handful of times, I assume.
I did in the early. I did. But you know, my interaction with her was kind of social, because we had to interact on things like, you know, birthdays and Christmas presents, and like she didn't coordinate my work in any way. Like she didn't run messages from Dave to me. They would just come down as, you know, typed paper. So, or he would come see me personally or something. So, but I did know her. I ran into her. I was probably the last person that's out of Scientology that saw her. I saw her I think it was 2008. I ran into her.
Interesting. And then she's still at where do you think she's at now? I assume.
I think she's at the Twin Peaks facility, the CST facility. Right. Yeah.
And they kind of like Heber Jench, I guess. She's being treated relatively, all things. Relative.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Heber's being treated well at all. I mean, I think he probably has a decent old age home that they're paying for. I don't know if it's any good.
I mean, it was like before the old age home.
I mean, Shelley. What's that?
It's just weird. They keep these people that they deem useless in orbit and in their location. I guess it's to keep them from, you know, doing things like you and Aaron and other people are doing. But it's a bizarre thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they don't like to let people go. I mean, they think really they're going to be, they think they're going to be around for eternity, and they're going to all keep coming back. So,
this is a really random thing I want to ask you. Speaking of eternity, when you were being audited, did you ever have expressed memories of a past life? What were they? And do you think there's ever any? Wow, really, your whole time?
No, I had expressed imagination. Okay, because it's like, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to adjudicate on whether we live before or we're going to live again.
Well, we don't know
because I don't know. It's a total mystery.
Right.
And unfortunately,
that's a sort of way to take.
Yeah, it's a mystery, and one of the great adventures and joys of life is being able to embrace and deal with that mystery. So I
Yeah.
did have that. I did have that short circuited for a long time, and I absolutely 100% had imaginations that I believed were past lives, that were all kinds of crazy space opera stuff and
That's cool.
spaceships, blah blah blah. Yeah, but it's just like, yeah, it's all imagination. It's
So that's so you get audited. Would you see this stuff? Would you like relive it? And would it be like an awesome rock musical? Be like, and then you're on the
Well,
spaceship.
here's the thing. Like I mentioned earlier, that the emitter is it's the arbiter of your truth. In other words,
Right,
if you say no, there's nothing, and the needle does this, and the auditor says, well, what was that? And you
right,
say that wasn't anything, and they say, well, I want you to take another look.
right,
And so you go, okay, I'll take a look, and they go, yeah, that, and they're pounding on you, that thing. So you're like, you want to eventually get the fuck out of there. So you're like, well, I'm saying, nah, this isn't real. They're saying, no, just say it. The meter says it's real.
right.
So now you're like thinking about an old episode of Star Trek, and the
Are you
meter saying is,
constantly thinking about it, or is it somehow you
well, no,
actually think we're
you get you get pictures of
like on?
movies or all kinds of crazy
Right.
different stuff, and then the meter says it's real, so people are like, yeah, that's real.
And
So
you never questioned that. I assume when you were going through the audit, you were so brainwashed, where like you're trying to think of shit,
yeah,
and then you thought, oh,
yeah,
well, that's real.
yeah,
That's wild. Yeah.
yeah. But the
That's
thing is, I now know that I was brainwashed, and there's a lot of people out there who were never in Scientology, and they have no idea how brainwashed they still are,
right.
because one of the, at least the benefit, I mean, this is kind of not worth it as a benefit, but at least I have the benefit of being able to deconstruct my own conditioning, and a lot of people
Yes.
never get there. They
No.
never become self-aware enough to know what is conditioning,
Hard.
and
Right.
what they are. And like Carl Jung said, like the greatest, what did he say, it's like the greatest the greatest thing you can ever achieve is to know who you are. And so a lot of people never have the urgency or the necessity to understand what is their conditioning. So at least I feel fortunate in that way, in that I've been willing to put myself in a position of like on a journey, a spiritual journey, a mental health journey. I mean, I was so delighted to find out that there's so many great mental health practitioners who have taken great things from Eastern religion, especially Buddhism. A lot of modern therapies are based on Buddhist principles. I was
Yes.
so delighted to find this out.
Probably
So,
should join
in
Buddhism
conscious,
instead of the other
what's
stuff.
that?
No, I said probably easier to join Buddhism than Scientology.
Well, but yeah, it is. But well,
No, I know what you're
as
saying.
far as I know, yeah, I'm not joining Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not joining anything.
Well, feel free.
Uh, yeah, but they don't. I mean, Buddhism doesn't believe in sin. They don't believe in that you have to interact with an organization in order to be free. I mean, there's a lot of things about it that are positives. While we're on the subject, I mean, Hubbard was really fond of saying that Scientology was a cousin to Buddhism, but it's not.
Right.
It has nothing to do with it. If it's close to anything, it's close to like a religion like Catholicism. I'm not putting Catholicism down at all, but
Sure.
only because
No,
Catholicism is very fixated on the idea of sin and of the idea of confession. And
well,
Scientology,
indulgences, buying indulgences.
yeah,
In the
there's a lot. There's many more parallels between
Yeah.
Scientology and the Catholic Church
That is
than there
fascinating.
is between Scientology and Buddhism.
Oh, did Miscavige have a I'm sure he never talked about other religions, but did he ever have a modern religious figure or historical religious figure that he respected? Did he ever think that? Did you ever comments like Jerry Falwell or like
No. L. Ron Hubbard. Everybody was a fake. Everybody was a phony. There were no.
Well, that's it, right? It's a conversation we get to next.
It was just Hubbard. Right. I mean, I secretly think that he very much studied Brigham Young. I mean, that's just my thing. Because
that would make sense. I'm sure he would never say it out loud, but I'm sure that L. Ron Hubbard fancied himself a Brigham Young like type.
No. Hubbard was like John Smith.
Funny.
Hubbard was
right. Would be the Brigham
Young. Hubbard was the guy that found the golden tablets under the tree. Right. right?
Well, yeah,
With the white lizard and all the other
Right.
stuff, right? No,
Right.
because if you think about it, Brigham Young, he trafficked people from Europe. He drove them across the U.S., killed a
Sure.
lot of them, right?
Sure.
Drove them to death, and he did it just so that Mormonism could become so dug in that you could never get rid of it.
Right.
And Miscavige is trying to do the same thing with Clearwater. He doesn't give a shit he doesn't care that the churches are empty, the quote unquote churches are empty, or there's no staff, or there's no people. Just got to put enough buildings there and own enough of Clearwater so they can never get rid of us. And that's his legacy. That's what I think. And he said enough things to me that I didn't just make that up. I mean, that was suggested to me by many conversations. I mean, even when we were setting up Scientology Media Productions, when we were setting up the broadcast facility, he sent a bunch of us, I mean, in 2 teams on 2 separate occasions, up to BYU to visit BYU TV. He's like, "Yeah, go up and see what the Mormons are doing."
Really? Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
shit. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, and we spent the day hanging out with the BYU broadcast people, and then they sent us into Salt Lake City to get like
Did
a
any
VIP
of you
tour.
think the other was weird? Because it might be.
I thought it was totally freaking weird. I thought it was unbelievably weird. I thought, I know what he's trying to do. I know exactly what he's. I mean, BYU TV. I mean, they have BYU football, so like they're legit, right? So, like, and then they hire out. They like have a bunch of shows like Netflix, like family shows, right? And they hire those out. They have in-house producers. They hire them out. And Dave's he's trying to do everything in-house, everything himself. That's a whole nother show on Scientology Media Productions, because that place is $100 million complete fiasco.
Right. Well, here's other thing I want to talk about, ask you about, and not to belabor the point that you got a decent amount of cash for your work, but your work was super obviously important, and it was kind of the engine. How were you able to get away with getting paid a fair wage? Because did they view media people as so important, or behind the scenes production? Going to change that to production.
Yeah.
They view production people equally as important from lawyers, where they're like, we have to pay them because
I mean, yeah, there were lawyers that made more than I did, but not many.
I bet, I'm sure, right? But
I like Monique Muffins Yingling.
Lawyers got paid by them, any real money, which is like Corinne Powell. I remember when I got attacked by Corinne Powell.
Yeah,
I assumed that she was making $400,000 a year because she was a spokesperson for $1 billion organization. So it's like Hebert, Corinne, Mike Rinder, Tommy Davis. My assumption is none of them made more than $100 a week. So it's like, it's interesting. It's like, I guess, do they reserve real salaries? Why was your work so? I don't think you're arrogant. I don't think you say your work is this important, but it is. Why was your work so much more important than the spokesperson's work?
Because well, I wasn't in the Sea Org, for one thing, so they had to pay me professional rate.
That's true, isn't that's interesting? But then why wouldn't they get an internal Sea Org person who was super talented?
I did finally get one. It took me 7 years to train him. I was part of my disappear quietly out the back door because I was not wanting to, just leave.
But you were there early on, so I guess they knew you and your talents since the 70s.
Yeah, okay. I tell you, you asked me why they thought it was valuable. They thought it was valuable because Hubbard said it was valuable. Because in 1963, L. Ron Hubbard did a film of himself saying that the only way to train people in Scientology is with films, and Scientology won't make it without films, blah, 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 blah. And then they were never able to pull it off. So essentially, all forward progress, all the plans, all the expansion, everything in Scientology was stopped because they couldn't make films. Okay.
Well, Battlefield's Earth is a work of art, but that's
a movie. That's not a film.
Yes, that's true. That's different, right? Because it's back then, it's all about these for purpose.
I'm talking very specifically about films to train people how to do Scientology. So that's the reason that it was important. And when I went up there, and then they were like, well, what do you, I'm like, this is what we get paid. And they're like, okay. And then, I would fight with them constantly to get as much money as I could, because over the years I hated them and I wanted to make enough money to get the hell out, and tell my story and write a book. And I was kind of not really able to pull it off because, I've been, anyway, whatever. I'm working on it.
Well, I'm glad you're finally doing it now. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to think badly of me for that, go ahead.
No, not at all.
what the
far
hell are
from
you
it.
people doing with your life? So
Well, I
anyway,
think there's a misconception too. You know, maybe you might have gotten 6 or even 7 digits, but not so much where you could live off that for the rest of your life and live in a
yeah,
palace.
no, between
Now,
taxes
you're
and
out
a
here hustling,
mortgage
man.
and
Yeah,
2
right,
kids and a
right,
divorce and all the
right.
other stuff and
I'm
people,
sure.
yeah, by the time you're done with it, it's like I
Right,
had enough money to live on for 3 years and
right,
now I'm
right,
husling, you know, so
right,
what it's like
right.
whatever.
So it's I want
And
the
plus
one of
I
the reasons
wasn't great with money. I wasn't great with money because all I ever did was work. So
Aaron
it's not
says,
like I was
"Don't
just
blame you if
not what
you're born in a cult."
whatever. I was
Right, or grew up in one. Right. No, I'm glad he clarified that. But that was the interesting part to me is like, oh, well, here's the other thing I wanted to ask. So when you were doing this important work,
yeah.
did you have the 12-hour days, or would you at least have manageable 8-hour days, 9 to 5, Monday to
No,
Friday?
I mean, it kind of depended. Mine were a little better.
Interesting.
I was
Okay.
like I didn't have to. There's things I wasn't required to do. Like these guys, they got to show up to what they call a muster every morning. It's an assembly. They got to jump out of bed and go to muster, and they do a head count. They want to make sure nobody escaped, right?
Right.
So I didn't
Right.
have to go to muster. So I had a 9 a.m. call because I was like, we used to do these real early calls,
Oh,
like
you had a
Hollywood
call. You
calls.
were on call and part of that whole.
Well, because it's a film, you have a call time.
Oh,
It's
right. Of
like you
course.
can't
Right.
make a film if you don't have a call time, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, but usually the call times up there, they were better than Hollywood because I used, I made sure that they were because in Hollywood, everybody wants to go home and see their
Yes.
family. So everybody shows
That's
up
what I
at
was
work at 6.
wondering. Right.
No, so usually like the call time would be like 9 a.m. So
Right.
I would sleep until 8:30 and,
Right.
make a protein shake in my room, take a quick shower, go
Just
to the set,
intense.
right?
Right.
And then, after dinner, we would do whatever. And then I was usually done by 10. It's still a
Right.
really long
That's a
night.
hell of a. That's they worked you to the bone though. That's a
Yeah, yeah,
13-hour day.
it was a lot.
Right.
It was a
So was
lot,
it
but
right?
I was out of there most weekends, but it was a
Right.
lot. I mean,
Right.
when you consider the work that I did and how much money that I made them, and
Right.
I'm not proud of that. I mean, I have nightmares about it every day, about the fact that I made these films, and I made them, at a level where I was I think the best way I'd put it was I said that I compromise my morals for the sake of my aesthetic goals. Okay, so because I really did believe in this mission, and I thought auditing
Well,
was
you
really
probably
helping
saved your
people.
life, man. I mean, you were on heroin, right? I
Yeah, I
mean,
did think they saved my life, but they actually
but
didn't. When I was,
that's an easy. I know they didn't, but that's an easy way to get brainwashed
yeah,
and
yeah,
you know.
big time, big time.
I do want to go over some. All of these are good, by the way. But I want to go over
Okay.
a few comments. Artsy Tartsy is a huge supporter of yours.
Yeah, I
So
appreciate that. I
yeah.
have some of my good friends are here, the
Oh,
people who've
good,
read
good.
my book, and I've interacted with
Um,
them, and they're
awesome,
great people,
awesome,
and I
awesome.
really
I can
appreciate
tell.
that. Hello, Leslie,
Yeah,
Artsy Tartsy.
yeah. There's some cool. She's a big sport, so I want to give her Artsy Tartsy a shout out. And she has a video about doing it on a potato. She said in an earlier comment. So do check out the YouTube page of Artsy Tartsy.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure, for
I definitely
sure.
want to see that. Apologies to the dog. She commented the dog has had enough already, but he's fine.
Yeah, your
Uh,
dog is being really well behaved, I
Thank
must
you.
say.
Yeah, no, he really is. He's pretty quiet, chilled out.
Pretty chilled.
Um, yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I think those are mainly the comments I want. Oh, one thing, random thing I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Like one comment was like, "Thank God, Miscavige didn't have any kids or whatever." Uh,
Yeah.
and I was gonna ask you, have you ever seen Miscavige with kids, or of course with his niece, who is now making her own way in the anti-Scientology?
No, no. I mean, when my older son was an infant, he was up there with his mom visiting me, and Miscavige was like all holding him and like goo goo gaga, and
So he
he
was
he
he would have those rare bursts of, oh,
he he is a narcissist in the worst possible
funny.
way.
So he's always aware of how people are looking at how he
Yeah, so he is able to calculate the right way to be in any
right.
situation.
So he doesn't come off
Um,
always as a cold prick necessarily.
no, he's able to do that. He's
Fine.
able to sort of be charming. I
Right.
mean, he's also really tone deaf. Like I remember at the the opening of the broadcast facility, Scientology Media Productions, he plagiarized this quote about, if you don't write your own story, somebody else will write it for you. I
Yes.
forget who said that, but it's a very
Not him. He did
often.
not. I know he did
No,
not.
no, it's a very often repeated, and it's rarely ascribed to the right person.
No. Right.
But he went off in this role, and then he ended the whole thing by saying that Scientology is the coolest religion on earth. Okay, and this is so tone deaf because he was kind of fond of trying to invite other religious leaders. I don't
Yes.
think there was any there at that one. Like maybe an Islamic person, a cleric, and maybe a rabbi, and maybe a minister. And could you imagine people like of other religious faiths sitting in the audience listening to him say Scientology is the coolest religion? Basically, he's saying we're cooler than you.
Oh, yeah,
So
right.
it's just
Right.
he was incredibly tone deaf. I mean,
Really
when
was tone deaf.
I was so cringe. I was like cringing when he said that. That was one of my moments. I'm like, I'm so out of this freaking thing. I just don't want to be unemployed. So, but
Yeah,
anyway,
what was that spark? What was that like? I'm sure it's in your book, and I'm a lazy asshole. I will physically read your book. I never read books, being a millennial, so I wait for the audio. But I will actually,
yeah,
and I travel, so it's like I have to get the book delivered. But
yeah,
well,
I know.
actually, I'll
working
get to
on
LA, and then I'll buy. I'm sure I could.
Well, if you want, I'll send you a Kindle if you want to load it on an iPad or something.
Oh, that'll be. Oh, right, you can do
Yeah,
Kindle.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll just send it to you.
Download a Kindle. I didn't think.
Yeah,
of that.
you can do that. You can do
Oh,
that.
perfect. So I'm gonna.
Yeah.
So I obviously want to have you back on after I've digested that.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm working on the audiobook.
Good.
So
I hope you do. Are you narrating yourself? I assume.
I am. Yeah.
Smart.
Which means I got a lot of retakes because I have my voice is whatever. It's
really. I think your voice is good. And
but there's a lot of artifacts when you use a real sensitive mic. I have a lot, whatever. I don't want to get into it, but I'm working at it, and it's actually coming out nice. I'm almost done with the 7th chapter out of 26, but it's starting to go much faster. It's really been a struggle because I have to do everything. I'm recording it, I'm editing it, I'm directing it, I'm performing it. It's just
right.
That means a
labor of love, but it is a labor.
Not anymore. I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to be done with everything Scientology. My book, my audiobook, my YouTube channel. I may rebrand it. I may change the name.
Interesting.
I'd like to talk to people about their mental health journey. I'd like to talk about people. I'd like to talk about, how do you make a world in which there's less harm? How do we return to a state of kindness? Like, how do we kind of get these virtues back? I'd much rather be talking about that than, than Leah Remini's trial or whatever, which I wish all of that well. And it's
I'll be covering that, that's why I'm going to LA, but
Yeah. And I'll be watching you covering it. So
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should grab a drink while you're out here.
I'd love to. Yeah, please. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll do that. That would be good.
I'm trying to be back by May 29th because there's a hearing. Although, Jacob Harkey, credit to him, has stolen a lot of my thunder. So he has been a great
Jacob. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Doing reporting for Tony Ortega, still is.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. I know Jacob. He's a good guy. I'm
very good guy.
He's a really good guy.
Very good guy. So he's on the ground. So he gives a lot of.
Yeah. He was one of my early supporters when I was writing my book.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. Yeah, I think he knows how to make the connections. I'm slightly jealous because he gets on Aaron's thing. He's there, and I was and this is why I talked about the few why I don't think he actually cares, because I was thinking, I'll always be the guy to be on Aaron's thing because Jacob works with Tony Ortega, and therefore he won't have Jacob on. But Aaron's not like that. Doesn't care. Not that we don't need, he's on the ground.
No, he doesn't care. No, it's just, there's no reason to care. Especially when you're trying to do 4 streams a day.
Right.
You're not going to be splitting hairs like that.
Right. But with some of I admire his work is absolutely crucial. And I'll be joining him as well, though I think
part of it is just that
who's there?
Jacob, he's here and he's been at the protest. Yeah. Somebody had a question about the protest. We never.
Yes. What is your view? It seems like you're supportive. We had a great not actual rundown of LRH's birthday speech because everybody refused to actually want to listen to it, including in the comments, understandably.
Yeah.
But of course, you guys got along. Had Shannon, who did a lot of the protesting in Chicago. Then I did some protesting in Chicago, and also, if you want to check out my YouTube, I have an interesting story about a cannabis arrest that I went through that I think Scientology might be responsible for. But I don't. I guess I'll tell that story if you don't know it. It's a not that you
No,
would.
I didn't know that they got you busted for a joint.
Yeah, pretty much. So I'm curious as to what your opinion on this is. So
well, I wouldn't put anything past them. I was just grabbing something. So listen, there's 2 levels of OSA. Okay, there's 2 levels. There's the clown car level. It's just a car full of clowns, right? And they're just idiots and they can't do anything right. And then there's this other level of OSA, which is really top level, like intelligence operatives that Miscavige works with personally and that he pays. And most of them are like private contractors. And those MFers can get some nasty shit done. They can get people arrested. So,
they really can.
And Miscavige likes that there's this clown car level because it keeps everybody confused. And I've seen him in the room with the clown car people. He just screams at them nonstop.
Right, and knows. So, I mean, I'll give you a very quick rundown. Long story short, I fly into the Chicago protest. I'm traveling the continent, so I was in Atlanta at the time from New York.
Right.
But I left the car and the dog at somebody's house. Flew from Atlanta to Chicago. One of the dudes, I was talking with Shannon about potentially storming the stage for Miscavige. Didn't happen. One of the dudes went up to me. He's like, "Hey, Dodge, you have warrants." I didn't have any warrants. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "You have warrants for crimes." And I'm like, "For what crimes?" He's like, "For crimes." So I thought that was bizarre, but didn't think anything of it. Flew back the next day. It was Super Tuesday and the primary is happening. So it's giving a live stream of the primary. And I stupidly said, I implied where I was staying. I was like, I'm at a golf course in suburban Georgia, and there's only one hotel at a golf course in suburban Georgia. So an hour later, I run to get some fast food. And I'm listening to the radio. Car's off, so it's not like a DUI or anything. And I'm smoking weed from a bowl, listening to the radio results. Cop knocks on my door, and I have less than a quarter ounce with me. He searches the car, and I'm booked for about 16 hours. Not only that, but that my parents had to call a million different people because they were told that I had bail, and then all of a sudden they said I had no bail, and then all of a sudden they said I had bail again. And it was this very strange labyrinthian maze. Obviously the Church of Scientology has a church in Sandy Springs and has honored the police force. The last thing I'll note, which might be irrelevant, is I got arrested in Cobb County, and the Cobb County sheriff in 2019 said he would instruct his officers to no longer arrest anybody for misdemeanor, which mine was misdemeanor, for under an ounce marijuana possession. So yeah, does Scientology, would they care? Take your time.
I don't know what happened. Hold on.
You lost your video.
I did, but it's going to come back in a minute. Here we go.
Bummer. That's all right.
There it is. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I heard that. Yeah, they could have. Yeah, they could have. It's anything's possible.
Yeah. I wonder why they care about me, but I guess if I get an additional.
Yeah, I mean, I would think. Yeah, but I mean, I would think that the kinds of operatives that have the ability to do that, they're pretty focused on very specific projects. So who knows? But
but I do wonder.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, nothing else. Only that I'm scared because usually the penalty is a slap on the wrist, but I wonder if the judge is going to be connected, and all of a sudden I'll find myself.
I wouldn't overthink it. I wouldn't overthink it. Anyway, but somebody asked about the protest. I went to one protest.
Yes,
what's
your feeling on that?
I was handing out my handouts. They hand out handouts at the protest center, so I did my own handouts. But anyway, yeah, no, I think they're great. I think what they're doing. Yeah, no, I think I would like to do more, but I think it's kind of like people were thinking that I was kind of inserting myself because I wanted to sell a book or something. So I'm like, oh,
I
okay.
mean, isn't everybody inserting themselves or trying to get monetized, and including
Yeah,
myself?
exactly.
Getting
But for
more
some reason,
subscribers and making money off of it.
it's
So
but for some reason it's not cool for me. And I was doing it because I felt
yeah,
it was
I heard that
possible.
criticism, and I was think that's kind of
Yeah,
bullshit.
it
And
was
you're
really
also
weird, but
trying to
it was
let
total
people
bullshit.
know, right? And you're trying to let people know of truths that people should know about. So,
yeah, and plus I was joking. I did a little video and I named it me shamelessly hawking my book on Hollywood Boulevard because that's my sense of humor. That's my sense of humor. That's I like, but and then somebody said, "Look at that! He's even admitting it." It was I'm like, it was crazy. It was crazy. But I love those kids. I love what they did. I'm proud of them because and I think it's great what they're doing, and I wish there was a way I could support them by physically showing up. Like what? I mean, I've been protesting since I was 5 years old. My parents used to take me to anti-nuke marches. You know, my mother's got pictures of me. She had, like with pictures with hand in hand with Linus Pauling. You know, and then in the against the Vietnam War and civil rights, and like I was at so many demonstrations, but you know, I go to demonstrate against Scientology and I get criticized, so it's really weird.
Yeah.
And let me just say it did not feel good, but I wish
I don't blame you.
I'd like to find a way to support them more than I have. So
good. Yeah.
But I'm extremely supportive.
Is there anybody in this anti-Scientology world who isn't supportive of the protesters? I'm trying to think of any.
No. Yeah, I mean, Chris said what he said. He said what he said. He said,
that was about it.
But. Yeah, like who cares? I mean, who cares? I mean, the idea is like, it just makes the people that are inside the buildings looking out at that, yes, they're going to dig their heels in. Then they're going to think that everybody out there is just insane. But it's not for them in there because they're not going to leave until they've had enough abuse. It's for the people outside. It's for the world so that the world doesn't get caught up in it anymore.
Right. I'm glad we explained that. And
yeah, I mean, I mean, like I was part of this movement. I mean, we ended the civil rights. I mean, we ended the Vietnam War. Like what? Protests don't work. Like what? Civil rights.
Right.
You know. The peaceful demonstrations in India under Gandhi. No, this is a really important tool. And they're getting monetized. And you know, I mean, sure. What's her name? Jessica. You know, I looked at her stuff, and she was dropping dollar bills in the intersection on Rodeo Drive to see if anyone pick them up. Right.
Well, you know, her big shtick, I saw her before. Of her big shtick was, "Can I be your sugar baby?" and go to these guys.
Yeah, she was doing all this stupid shit.
What she was. So good on her.
Yeah, I know. But then they're like, you know what?
Intelligent enough to follow. I haven't seen any of her content because I'm just like,
no, because I talked to her. I mean, I talked to her, and I talked to Chris Without a Hellcat, who I thought was a great guy.
I like. She's literally the one I don't follow only because I'm prejudiced with her previous videos. And I'm thinking if
the thing is, she doesn't. Yeah, but the thing is, the reason I like them and I respect. Yeah, but I like them and I respect them because they made a decision that that's what they're going to stream.
That they did, and she's only getting more. I mean, she had a big audience. She didn't need to do this. She had a big audience with those type of videos.
Yeah, she didn't. So they're like, you know what? It's like, you know what, Church of Scientology bad. Yeah, like let's do something good with this. I mean, you know, before she was just being a prankster.
Right. That's what and now she's brought 6 digits of followers into this.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, exactly. So
I've watched Chris Without a Hellcat, really interesting. Danny and Lee have been doing great work in LA as well.
Yeah, I like his stuff a lot. I think he's a good guy. Yeah. I'll probably go down there and spend some time. I don't know. I have a couple of friends.
I'll let you know. I'll be down there as well. So
yeah, I'll go down. Maybe you and I'll go down there. Maybe we'll grab Jeffrey and go down there. Jeffrey's always a lot of fun. To hang out. And I think he would go with us. Then I have a couple of friends coming over from UK in May, and then we're gonna go and do some stuff. And
perfect.
And so we'll do some things. And like I'd like to make myself available to any of them if they want to do an interview. And I'm not saying that because I want the FaceTime with any of them, but because I know what's his name, the defender of ants, DOA. Somebody sent me a message. Go down and find him. He wants to interview you, but I wasn't able to hook up with him because he just gotten out of prison. Not prison. He's just gotten out of jail, and because he got
Yeah, well,
got
they
held for a
set
few
him
days.
up with a bunch of weird stuff too,
Yeah,
which is why I
yeah,
was wondering about my situation.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and I have a bunch of more tickets. I'd like to go hand them out. So
yeah, please, yeah,
so,
definitely. I think you guys definitely should connect. And he
yeah,
has, I mean, these numbers are just gangbusters, and some of these people are far surpassing my YouTube just for being out there for hours upon hours.
yeah,
So, and
yeah.
more power to them as they should. Yeah, and the Susan says the protests are to draw attention to the international criminal human trafficking, money laundering, family shattering cult of Scientology.
Yeah.
They
I
are
have
not.
to add one thing to that. I have to really add one thing to that list, which is identity stealing, because the most dangerous thing, it can't do any of those things that are listed there without stealing a person's identity. That's the first thing
Right.
on the list. So before you can
Yes.
do any of that other stuff, you have to steal their identity. So
That you
I don't mean like steal their social security number and their passwords. I mean literally
Their validity.
take their story of what they conceive of themselves as and replace it with something else. Then you really got them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take that validity. But I do wonder what will. It's kind of adorable that there are these staff member, I guess, because they're not Sea Org, right? Or are they Sea? They're not Sea Org. The people who
Well, it depends where. I mean, the test center in LA, those guys are Sea Org.
Yeah.
They're Sea
Okay,
Org.
right.
Yeah.
They are right.
But
They're dressed in the official uniforms, right?
Yeah, but the Oregon, Chicago, where you were with Shannon, and
right.
those are not Sea Org. They're staff. They're just public staff.
That's interesting. So LA is prestigious enough where they do with Sea Org, and then the rest of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the LA org. Everything on L. Ron Hubbard Way is all Sea Org.
I bet New York probably has Sea Orgs at their Times Square.
I don't know. I mean, that is a classified org, so that would.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's what I wonder if stars will be made out of any of those Sea Org members, like Sebastian, who everybody seems to.
No, they got rid of them. I think they moved them. I think they just moved them.
They got rid of them.
Yeah, right. Sebastian. I don't know. I haven't been following it that closely, but I know they got.
They should get out because they realize some of them are celebrities in this world.
I know. They could leave and start a channel. It would just be the weirdest. Like when Andy Warhol.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when Andy Warhol said, in the future everyone will have 50 minutes of fame, he had no idea. I mean, that was so prescient when he said,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, he was just beyond right. So
that's funny. Yeah, no, it's
so. Yeah, I think we I was just saying we should probably wrap this up soon because I got.
Yes, dog is itching to go. So
yeah, we've been on
for 2:15 a long time. But thank you for making the time. You're fast. I could ask you questions endlessly.
Yeah, we'll do it again. I mean, maybe we could just if we could try to keep it to an hour and a half. We could do one weekly.
Yeah. Well, I'll do a better job of keeping it almost singularly or two topic focused, perhaps.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of stuff we can touch on.
Yes, I mean, I could ask a million different questions. But so we'll keep it like a tight hour and a half. But hell of a lot of fun. Thank you for.
Yeah, it's always great to see you, Dodge. I really enjoy our conversations a lot.
Me too.
And I really appreciate everybody who came by, even those of you who were maybe a little critical. And
that was
you have questions.
2%,
I know, but
2%.
But I think I'm weird because I always kind of find who in the room hates me the most. That's the person I want to talk to. So.
Of course.
So anyway.
And you're I've been on YouTube really before Scientology, I've had my YouTube for 8 years. So any direct negative, it's almost, and then I was a news anchor, local TV news anchor. So half the comments were, who's this disgusting redhead with the smoker's yellow teeth? And they're right about. They're not wrong. So, but it eventually it flushes through you if you have a thick enough skin, but that takes about a year or 2 years.
That's what it took me.
Then you have fun with them, and it's kind of funny, but takes a moment, and that's why mine is radically open in my YouTube, and I thought you handled each of the consternations, though. I'm glad we brought them up because I think you addressed them very, very effectively, and to really dispel, a lot of unnecessary gripes that shouldn't be gripes to begin with.
Well, I tell you, one last thing that I really have to say.
Please.
When I first got onto YouTube, I thought when I first left Scientology and I got onto YouTube, I thought we were all on the same team. I thought we'd all
You would
been through
hope.
whatever. I thought we'd all been to whatever we went through, and now
Right.
we're all on one team, and we're gonna.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, I felt like I was in ethics trouble, and I was back in Scientology. It was really bizarre. So I learned that we are on the same team, but there's some different things going on. So, like I said,
it's a good way to put it.
yeah, like I said, I want to focus on healing from abuse, because I think that's, for me, that's the only meaningful purpose, is to focus on that one thing, as I said, whether it's cultic abuse or relational abuse.
And I'm glad you're broadening out. Right. And that's the last thing is I don't know how Aaron could do 8 videos a day. It's just like, you know, for me, and I'll lose some subscribers, I'll gain as well. But like, I went to New Hampshire, covered the primaries, did my own political thing. Scientology is where the bread and butter is. But there's nothing, you know, I think the more interesting YouTube videos, like I like Vanessa LaRose, for example, who's talked about Scientology, who I've had on. She has a lot of videos about mental health, which are interesting, you know, because you know she has experience, right? She's like, oh, she experienced Scientology. She's also experienced with trauma, and now she's getting education in mental health. So those videos are from an expert, just like, you know, you talk about.
She left Scientology and got a degree in as a psychologist. Right. She's amazing.
Exactly. Right. So, and for me, you know, I ran for office once upon a time and was in New York City politics and played that game and was a local. So, you know, I hope, and some people have commented that because of my experience, I add a unique niche commenting on politics. But that's going to be a thing too. You branch out. You're first going to lose some subscribers, because they'll be mad that it's like, well, I only want you for Scientology. Some are so dislike you doing something, they'll actually take the initiative to unsubscribe. But then you'll get a whole cadre of new people who are investing.
Yeah, well, I've thought about rebranding my channel to be.
Not about it, right?
Yeah, I've thought of rebranding it and just calling it, but seriously, Mitch.
I like that.
Only because there's reasons why we take things so seriously. There's reason, and we all need to stop doing that, because it's just like things got way too serious on YouTube, and it was literally starting to interfere with my mental health. And I took a little break to do other things. Like I brought a friend of mine on who, you know, read her resignation letter, who had grown up in Scientology, and I did some things that I thought were worthwhile. But it's like, and I'm going to come back and do more stuff. So listen, so what day are you going to be here?
I will be here May 25th. So I got some time.
Okay, great.
Because I'm in Louisiana now, so I got to drive all the way out there. Although I know.
Oh man, I'm green with envy. You're in Louisiana. Are you going through New Orleans? I love Louisiana.
Yes, I will. I can't wait, because I'm going to protest in Austin, so I'm going to do about 4 days in New Orleans.
Oh, great! Yeah, I haven't been there in a long time, but I've spent a bit of time in New Orleans. I love New Orleans.
It's a beautiful city, isn't it? I haven't been in about.
Yeah, it's the best. It's just the best.
Yeah, oddly enough, I lived in Shreveport on the opposite ends of Louisiana for 3 months. I interned for the mayor because my dad did some governmental work. But yeah, it's like the more famous, you know, but even all that time up there, I never went down to New Orleans. That'll be fun. But yeah, I mean, you know, that's why I'm trying to do this. You know, traveling is my addiction. You know, I've been to 48 states in the US and 27 states in Mexico and 6 provinces in Canada. So I have this weird, it's like I'm a modern day drifter. Like I can't stop traveling and seeing different places. And it has to be like I have much less interest in Europe and whatever. So yeah. I'm working with an anti-Scientology person. She's out in Baton Rouge. So stay tuned for that, because I'm going to do some protesting in Baton Rouge.
I definitely will.
Appreciate it, and to the audience as well. And then I'll be out in Austin.
Yeah, maybe I'll have you guys on my channel and I'll interview you.
Dude, I love that. Fun. Thank you. That'll be a lot of fun.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we're gonna say goodnight.
Yes.
Love you guys.
It's about time.
I really appreciate you all coming by, and this is fantastic.
This is a lot of fun.
Thank you, Dodge. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you. This is a personal, you know, I feel like I'm having my own personal podcast because I've listened to you before and I'm a big fan of yours. So
it's great.
It's just as fun for me as it was for the audience. So.
Yeah, you were going to ask me questions from the podcast I did, so we'll get to that.
Well, those are most of the questions that I got.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, good. Okay, good.
But there's still some more, because I listened to it I want to say it's much as 2 weeks ago, and then
Mhm.
it was the whole thing, and then I listened to like the first quarter of it today. So
Yeah, I was really happy with it. I thought he did a great
yeah,
job.
yeah, very much. So thank you. You're the best for making the time. Really interesting
You're
food for
welcome.
thought. Much appreciated. Keep on fighting, and yeah, what you're doing is super important and exposing the truth. So you
Yeah,
have me
you
as an
too.
ally. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I
you
appreciate
too.
the
I hope
sentiment.
I look forward to seeing you in person.
Likewise. Looking forward to meeting you. Take care, Mitch. You're the best. Au
Thank you.
revoir.
You too. Good night.
Good night.